It's showtime.
Okay, Tokyo, South America, Australia, France, Germany, UK, Africa.
Here we go. Head on with Bob Kincaid. 3 hours of conversation, cussin' and a discussin' with America's only born and bred Southern liberal talk host. Head on with Bob Kincaid is brought to you each night by Coal River Mountain Watch. Coal River Mountain Watch invites you to become part of the solution, part of a sustainable future, part of the uprising against mountaintop removal. Coal River Mountain Watch, crmw.net. And now, from high in the hills of beautiful West Bicod, Virginia, here's Bob Kincaid on the Head On Radio Network.
Well, howdy. And here we are, off and running at a minute and a half past the hour on this, the 17th day of May, 2018. This is The Horn. Headon.live is where we live. That's where you go if you would like, for instance, to be a part of the Madcap Mary Multimedia Zany Wacky Real-Time Extravaganza that is the Horn chat room during the hours in which this program is live, i.e. 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you go there and you pick out a screen name and a password, well, by Jiminy, you'll be met by the likes of Anatole and greeted by the likes of and welcomed by the likes of Anatole and Foam Cups and Silent R. Lamar and Squeaky and BT Blom, and of course capably moderated by longtime inveterate, indefatigable veteran chat room moderator Sparky, who, being a spacing guild master this evening, has folded space to become Man Cave. Yes, everybody's there. More will be along, waiting just for you. So pop right in. The conversation, as they say, is fine. Yes. Hi, I'm Bob Kincaid. It is Thorn in the Side Thursday here in the hills and hollers of almost level West by Coal, Trump, Virginia-stan. And as is always the case, we begin the program this evening with thanks. We have thanks to send out to our subscribers, the people who set it and forget it, and at the cost of something less than half of a McDonald's hamburger, no cheese, per day, managed to keep this program on the air. So thank you very kindly to Nancy in New York. Thank you, Nancy, so very much. Thank you to Arthur in Arizona. Thanks very kindly to our buddy Gary, labor man in New Mexico. Thank you very much to our buddy Glenn in New York. And thanks to Reinhard in Virginia. And thanks also to Tim in Arizona. Okay? Thank you very, very much indeed. Also, thanks going out to those of you who responded last night to the fact that I put aside fundraising. We had a $400 fundraising deficit last night, and I just said, heck with it, and asked folks to become sustaining subscribers, $10 a month, of Coal River Mountain Watch, because you got a chance to hear last night exactly how much it is that Coal River Mountain Watch does with so very little indeed. So thanks very kindly to Vincent and Chris and to Charlene for what they did to help keep Coal River Mountain Watch going in the ongoing struggle for Appalachian human rights and human dignity. And just plain life. Thank you, Brother Deacon Asa, for letting me know that we are running hot and true on both the White Rose stream and the headon.live stream. That's refreshing to know and encouraging, and it's good to not have to fret about something like that this evening. Okay? So I will go ahead and say that we can't do what I did last night very often, or else we'll find ourselves without a radio program. But we got $200 to raise this evening. 10 at 20, 20 at 10, however. And it would be awfully nice if we could raise that. Since I just basically wrote off the last 2 days of fundraising, that means that, it would have been 6, but instead we're just forgetting about it. And it's just $200 this evening. 10 at 20, 20 at 10, 1 at 200, 2 at 100, 4 at 50, 8 at 25, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully people will go to headon.live and click on the PayPal button and, help us make it to the end of May. Because remember, courtesy of Ralph's, we have the Trash Fits Walker Stand Challenge. And if we meet the fundraising goal, then, there we are. And we get a little boost at the end of the month. That having been said, I thought we would begin the program this evening with a conversation. We just recently got past a primary here in West Virginia. And and there were ugly aspects of it, and there were bizarre aspects of it. But the primary's over. The slate for the general election is set, and rather than trying to lionize one of the candidates or another, I thought it might be beneficial to hear from someone who worked largely quietly in the background. And toward that end, I have a young campaigner on hold on the phone with me right now. And in point of fact, she worked hard and tirelessly through the campaign in relation to a couple of candidates. She works on the Democratic side of things. She is continuing her work into the general with another campaign way out of state. I talked to the candidate last night. She's a fantastic person. But I thought it would be interesting to get the perspective of what it looks like to participate in the political process in West Virginia from someone who has more potential years invested in the long-term future than, say, I do at this point in time. So welcome to the program, and listen carefully, too. Brianna Wade Piercy, who hails from southern West Virginia. Brianna, thank you so much for taking time to join us.
Thank you, Bob. It's a joy for me to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, I'm tickled pink. You and I have been talking for a couple of weeks now, and you were communicating with me during the campaign, talking about some things going on in the background. And well, let's just start by telling people a little bit about who you are, where you're from, the basic sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, my name's Brianna Wade Piercy. I've been married for about 3 years to my husband. My husband's not political. He prefers to stay in the background. I am a native of McDowell County. My dad was a practicing attorney for a number of years until his recent retirement. My mom is a current social worker. Right now, I work as a campaign staffer for Democrats. My first campaign was back in 2016, and then I've worked for a number of candidates this year with the midterms, and the midterms have been interesting. So to say the least. And I live out in the country with my husband with 3 cats and some livestock. So just pretty much the gist of me, Bob.
Well, I think you sell you sell yourself a little bit short, Brianna, because you got involved in the political process largely as a result of Bernie's candidacy and his call for young people to come out into the process. Is that correct?
Yes, and it was actually kind of an accident how I got in. When I got involved in 16, my candidate and I actually grew up together. I've known my candidate most of my life, and he needed somebody, because my dad and his dad were friends, and so were his mom, and before, they're now deceased, his parents are. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And Bob, we started off with about 10 people on staff, and then it was down to me and him near the end, his girlfriend and their children, and we won 3 out of 4 counties. And I was also heavily involved with the other Democrats as well in 16. That's how I ended up running into Allison, along with an initiative I was working with some other groups to help get the water clean in southern West Virginia in 16 as well. And I'm still continuing that fight as well.
Well, that's a fight that has to continue. Now, since the audience to the Horn Family Community Congregation is largely outside of West Virginia, some have likely heard of McDowell County as a result of some of the coverage that has been portrayed from down that way, among other things. Bernie did a town hall with Chris Hayes of MSNBC down there, and there have been various and sundry stories about McDowell County from all the news outlets and CNN and what have you, all the way up to and including a feature by Anthony Bourdain from his Parts Unknown program with CNN. Is there anything in particular about McDowell County that you think has been, because mostly the talk is about the joblessness, the hopelessness, obviously the opioid problems there. Is there anything about McDowell County that you think people should know that has not been covered?
I've to kind of discuss this with you, off the air, Bob, because I kind of feel like certain things, like certain media coverages, have been a disaster, because I don't feel that they have covered McDowell County in the correct light. Because I don't see McDowell County as hopeless. I see people down there all the time that are trying to rebuild McDowell County. They don't mention all the groups down there that are trying to bring businesses in there and opportunities, the little smaller groups. There's places that help rebuild homes. There's places that help people find jobs. If you go to McDowell County, when my husband goes to work down there at 4 a.m, you can't get nowhere because it's bumper to bumper traffic of people that are leaving home going to Charleston, which is about a 2-hour drive to go to work, and driving to Mercer County, depending on what part of McDowell you live in and what part of Mercer you're going, it can take an hour. So that's the thing. People are trying down there. There are some hardworking people down there. McDowell County is just not opioids and hopelessness. And plus, you're going to run into some of the best people down there. That's, what, broke my heart, because, we were both there with the Bernie thing, and I felt like so much was left out. And I felt that certain things should have been, said instead of, what was. So, and certain voices, I think, should have been heard more so than others.
Well, and with regard to those certain voices, let me sort of get a little bit specific. One of the things I noticed in the Bourdain piece a couple of weeks ago was that when the subject of Donald Trump came up, anyone who talked about Trump was it was all Trump supporters. Is it that monolithic in southern West Virginia that everybody just defaults to Donald Trump? Or is that another media generated myth? I mean, the numbers were what the numbers were. 68% to 30 or 32% or something like that in the general election 2016. But does that hold true on a day-to-day basis?
That's what kind of another pet peeve of mine, Bob. Yes, there were a lot of people that voted for Trump, but there was also quite a bit of people that did not vote for Trump. And the way the media portrayed it, like everybody down here is a Trump supporter. Not everyone down here is a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Hillary in the general election. I didn't want to because you've known me since 16, Bob. Like, I was a huge Bernie fan.
Well,
and
yeah, but you know, I supported Bernie in the primaries as well.
Yeah.
But the nature of the political process is such that when your candidate doesn't win in the primary, then you support the party. You vote in the primary with your heart and you vote with your brain in November. I mean, it's not that. So what I've said here is that, you know, well, you're another example of somebody who actually managed to pass the quadrennial national one-question IQ test.
And that's what has drove me crazy. They were like, because with the media, they was like, oh, you know, they try to portray us all as Trump supporters, and not all of us are Trump supporters. And what drove me nuts about Trump, Bob, and actually it kind of hurt my feelings, the fact that this man was able to bring hope of something that we know is no longer available. You know what I mean? The fact that you're putting that type of false sense of hope into some of these people that have amazing hearts, you know, it's
You mean like
really
the preaching that the coal industry is coming back?
Yes. Yeah, and there's a lot of us down here that know that the coal industry, Bob, is not coming back.
Not the way that he presented it. And you know, the fact of the matter is, I spent a lot of time on the program last night deconstructing a statement from Paul Krugman to the effect that mountaintop removal is over, that it's done, that it's not happening anymore. We say things like coal's not coming back. When we say that, Brianna, what we're saying is that it's not going to provide employment to 100,000 West Virginians anymore.
Thank you. That's, you know,
but it's still being
being
extracted. There just aren't that many jobs in it anymore.
No, and I was reading a study the other day on how many people the coal industry actually employs. And the sad part is, Bob, that Arby's, a fast food chain, employs more people than the coal industry does. And that's a fast food restaurant that you can eat at anywhere in the country, you know.
And pays crap wages and no benefit, no pension, no health care. Well, so that begs the question then. You've got a lot of people leaving McDowell County to go to work in, say, Charleston, points elsewhere. But you've also got people. You know, you're about half my age. Let's just deal with we'll just deal with it. And so, you know, what West Virginia's future looks like to you is probably significantly different than what West Virginia's future looks like to me. And I would extend that to say that what the future of the United States looks like to you probably looks dramatically different than what it looks like to me, because, you know, you can look 50 years out and you'll be an old lady by then. I will have been pushing up daisies for a while by then. But what does it look like versus what would you like for it to look like?
Well, Bob, I've told people all the time, I would love to move back to McDowell County. I would. You know, that's my home. And I've talked to a lot of my friends over social media that have left McDowell County for job opportunities. And they've told me over and over, like, I wish we could go back to where we played as kids, because it's even different. McDowell County is when I grew up versus now after the floods came. And because we've always, you know, talked when we were younger about having our kids grow up together, and that's not a reality because all of us have had to move somewhere else for jobs because the jobs are just not available. There's nothing to do down there. And now Mercer County is starting to kind of resemble a little bit McDowell County when it comes to certain things. And if we don't change the current establishment and how and allowing more businesses to come in and allowing a diversification of our economy and quit worshiping the coal god, you know, and then this area is going to die, like most of southern West Virginia, because there was a saying that I've always heard that everything stops in Charleston. And it does. Like when it comes to your businesses and healthcare and a number of other things, everything stops right there. It's like they draw a line and nothing else comes. Like, because I remember I went to this workshop a few years ago. It was having to do with proper healthcare, and I saw where they had these workshops everywhere but in my area. And I asked the guy why. I said, you know, because Bob, you know what I've done with my 9 to 5. I've done social necessary services, contract providing, where I go into the homes of some of these children, and you know, some of the I can't describe over the radio exactly how awful the conditions are with some of these children in McDowell County and Wyoming County. And I've been in homes where, Bob, I'm not kidding you, they had no floors in some of these homes. Like, I was literally stepping on dirt when I walked into some of these homes. I've been in homes where there's no windows. The only thing they've had as a window was plastic with a little bit of wood. And you can imagine what that's going to be like in the winter, and the fact that if you get sick, the closest place is Welch Emergency. And if you are too sick, the ambulance authority down there have to send you, if they don't have enough beds in Welch, to Mercer County, Virginia, depending on where you live, and sometimes Kentucky.
That's terrifying on a number of levels. And so when people grow up that way, if they can figure a way to get out, they get out. And if they can't get out, they're there because they're trapped. All of this leads to something you and I have discussed, and what I call the hillbilly brain drain, where people who do have the ability to get out. I think that there's a possibility you may be leaving West Virginia at some point. You know, not because you're just itching to get out of West Virginia, but because this state doesn't, as is the case in so many rural areas across the country, does not provide any sort of opportunities. Is this something where a forward-thinking, in your opinion, where a forward-thinking government can intervene, or is this an unstoppable process?
I think you can stop it. I think, you know, everything can be stopped at some point. You know what I mean? You know, even rain has to stop. You know, it can't rain forever. So I think if we got some forward thinkers in there, and we got some of these people out there that are doing more harm than they are good, that are taking money from coal companies, big pharma, if we get these men out of there and start cleaning house, if we actually clean house, get all these people out and get some younger people in there, or some forward thinkers, and put them all on the table and be like, look, this is what we got to do. You know, we need to start putting factories, and like put one in Bluefield and like 2 in McDowell County. Bring this down here and put this in Wyoming County, and put something like this in Ringo, or go off exit 1 and put a theme park off exit 1 in Bluefield. Because Bob, you know, something like Carowinds would help this area so much. Because people fail to realize, like Dollywood, there was nothing there before Dollywood. There was nothing there in Florida before Disney World. Like, so if you put something like that off of exit 1, where there's all that land, that would bring in huge revenue, especially since we're starting to get the four-wheeling tourism up and running.
And talk
that would
about.
give
Now, I
tourism
don't have a lot of four-wheeler experience. Talk about that for a little bit, because that was touched on in the Bourdain piece a few weeks back. What is going on down there with the Hatfields and McCoys, the trail, or I'm not sure what the exact title is, but it's certainly an element of tourism economy. Is that really a going concern?
To local people, yes, because you're bringing people in from out of town to come and look at enjoy our mountains with ATVs and side by sides. Because me and my husband, because we still go back and forth to McDowell County because I still have my family down there. We've met people from New York, Pennsylvania. There's people that came here from Canada. When my husband worked in Blue Whale for a while, he said there was a guy that he met that came into the auto parts store down there from Boston, Massachusetts, in this full four-wheeler gear. And I think that if we, start investing, our money more properly into things like that could help us more than it could hurt us, then yeah, maybe the four-wheeler attraction can become a thing. Like I said, along with the theme park and things for tourists to do. Because
realistically, just to remind people, we're talking about an area that is within just a few scant hours of millions and millions and millions of people. Whether you're talking about the population centers of Virginia, North Carolina, D.C., most of the East Coast, a whole lot of the Midwest, it's an easy part of a day's drive to get there. Let me turn your attention, if I could, to another issue that has been on the radar of late. I guess we're about to have a special session of the incredibly useless West Virginia legislature. And one of the problems that has been identified is the fact that we've got a medical, well, they call it medical cannabis, but cannabis isn't actually allowed. You can take a pill or rub something on yourself or but you can't smoke the stuff. But the legislature has not dealt with the banking aspect of this, which is going to prevent any financial institution from being able to deal in any way whatsoever with the monies that arise out of medical cannabis when the law, such as it is, does take effect. And that's largely because there are elements of the Republican majority that, frankly, don't want to see this take effect. But is something like cannabis legalization a factor that could change these? I hate to use the word, but I guess it applies. These blighted areas of southern West Virginia.
Oh yes, this could bring in so much money to southern West Virginia. It would not even be funny no more, Bob. And the fact is, the reason we're not getting what we're supposed to be getting is because of the corruption in our government. And this goes not just to legislators in Charleston. This trickles all the way down to the county commissioner's office. Because if you go to places like McDowell, Wyoming, and places like that, people down there can go on and on and on all day on the corruption of their local county commissioner's office and how money is not being properly distributed and how these legislators are being funded by Big Pharma. And you know that as well as I am, Bob. That's why we're not seeing medical cannabis, because you have these big pharmaceutical companies like Cardinal.
Let's see. Isn't there somebody in West Virginia's state government who is intimately associated with Cardinal?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be like our attorney general and his wife? The folks who ain't from around here, as we like to say.
Yes,
who
and
is
that's
the
what drives me crazy.
who is the Republican nominee for the Senate seat currently held by Joe Manchin.
Yes,
Have I got that right?
yes, and that's what drives me crazy, Bob, is that West Virginia has been taken advantage of for far too long. And I can say this because I grew up in McDowell County, and I remember my grandfather telling me stories about company stores. For people that are not from here, don't know what a company store is, coal company had monopolized all of southern West Virginia at one point, to where the only places you could buy from a company store, they monopolized education, and a number of other things. And the most famous story about their judiciary system and how they done things was the Hatfield story that, now on the History Channel. The Battle of the Tug, which is, an infamous story. But, and between us allowing people like the coal companies to come in, not reinvest into our communities, and then take their millions and leave. And that's how I feel about Patrick Morrisey. The fact we've allowed, excuse this term, a carpetbagger.
It's the internet. It's the internet. Frankly, you can call him far worse if you want to.
Okay. Am I allowed to cuss on here, Bob? Yes, no.
Blue streak, Brianna. Okay, the FCC has no jurisdiction here. You can use the fun words as long, unless Mama's listening, and we don't want Mama to know you know those words, right? Yeah.
Oh, Mom knows I know those words, and she says them with me sometimes.
Then let her rip.
Yeah. But yeah, Bob, the fact we've allowed these carpetbaggers to come down here and take advantage of people down here because they're good people. Some of them are less educated because West Virginia has a 6% population that has a bachelor's degree. And I think that's just wrong.
Wait, 6?
And I think it's, six. The last study I seen was about 6% of the population had higher education, like a bachelor's degree, PhD, along those lines. That's the last study that was quite a few years ago. I don't know if it's gone up by then. But yeah, that's the last time I've seen, and that was about 3 or 4 years ago. And I think people like Patrick Morrisey coming in here and other Republicans from out of state and taking advantage of people, I think is bullshit. I do.
It is. It is, and it's sometimes. Sometimes the parlor words just don't quite cut the mustard, and it is exactly as you described it. So, everybody has said, and I imagine you and I both have our Joe Manchin problems. I know I do. But the fact of the matter is, for instance, yesterday in the Senate, and this is, it's like a tale of two Joe Manchins. Yesterday in the Senate, they had the vote on net neutrality. Guess what Joe Manchin did? He got it right. He voted the right way on net neutrality. Archmore's daughter, Shelley, of course, got it wrong. We may presume that Patrick Morrisey would get it wrong. And then today he voted in favor of Gina Haspel to run the CIA, and got it wrong. And it seems like we tend to notice Joe more when he gets stuff wrong than when he gets stuff right. Maybe that's because maybe that's because bad news always seems to percolate up more rapidly and with greater ease than good news does. But is there, and I'm just going to is there any doubt in your mind, Brianna, whatsoever, that Joe Manchin is far better than a dope pusher like Patrick Morrisey?
Yes, I think he's better. And
not best, but certainly better.
Yeah, he's way better than Patrick Morrisey. Patrick Morrisey actually scares me. Because if you look at the statistics of how many pills have been pushed through our small little area. It's crazy the amount of pills that have came through. And
well, what was the name of that one little town where the 3 or 4 million pills went through? Was that Kermit?
I want to say it was. Yeah, it was either Kermit or Williamson. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Kermit, and there were literally enough pills run through one pharmacy in Kermit to provide like a month's script for every man, woman, and child in the entire state of West Virginia. Does that strike you? Does that strike you, Brianna, as being an accident?
No.
A paperwork error? Whoopsie! We just sent 5 million hydrocodones to Kermit.
No, that does not surprise me. And here's the thing, Bob. People think that the pill issue is a recent issue. No, it is not. I have known people with pill issues since I was a child, like a little bitty girl back in the early 90s. It's been going on since the 80s, pretty much, this pill epidemic. Because I've had friends growing up that have lost their parents to drug overdoses, and these people are now 30. Some of them are in their 30s. They're my age, and in their 40s, that have lost at least one parent to a drug overdose. And the fact of the matter is that it's gotten worse since the 80s, and the fact that there's been people in McDowell County and Wyoming County in these southern regions that have been screaming for help for years, because you've had my generation, a lot of people in my generation, and younger, and a couple people that have generations above me, like in their, like I said, 30s and 40s, who have been raised by their grandparents or relatives, or grew up in single parent homes because of the drug problem. And I've told people all the time, people did not care that our region was suffering with this pill and drug epidemic, because you were dealing with poor white people and African Americans. It wasn't until it hit the rich white kids in Charleston and Huntington, then all of a sudden we have an issue with pills, and we have to do something about it. That's how I felt with the pill epidemic in this area. And I feel that the doctors know better, because you've gone to school for almost 10 years, and you know what prescriptions to write for people. For certain things, not every pain deserves an oxycodone, and not everything deserves an Opana. You can write a high prescription for Motrin, ibuprofen, or something along those lines that's non-addictive. And the sad part is, Bob, it's affected a lot of families close to me.
Oh,
it's people in my own family.
It's torn them apart. I guess it goes without saying, if I asked you the question, do you know anyone who's died from opioid overdose, or from heroin or fentanyl? Or do you?
I quit counting.
You quit counting?
Yes. I've known so many people that have died, or that have, really messed themselves up mentally, because people fail to realize, too, that drugs lead to other problems, like heart conditions. It can mess up your mental state. I know people who got messed up in the head mentally because of drugs. I know people who've tried to quit and end up dying of a heart attack a couple months later, because they were so reliant on that. And I've known so many people throughout my life, throughout the years, that have died. And I just quit counting at the people I discovered that have died off pills and everything, between people I know in my personal life to clients, you name it. I've just quit counting, Bob.
But that doesn't mean you quit caring.
No, I just can't keep up with the number of people no more.
Well, something you mentioned, and as we were talking in preparation for all this, is that you looking back at it all, think that the opioid crisis, at least in West Virginia or in Central Appalachia, began in the coal industry.
Yes, it did. It began in the coal industry because I remember growing up with this. It's just people in the area and even people in my own family that were taking pills because they were in pain, because coal mining work is tough labor.
Yeah, you're not going under the ground with
into.
picks and shovels anymore, but that doesn't mean that it's easy.
Yeah, and it's hard work on your body. And I know people that would pop a few pills and then go back in there, and I know people who were scared to go underground, but had to do what they had to do to put food on the table, and would take a Xanax or something of that nature and go underground.
And of course, that stuff's highly addictive as well. I worked in the workers' compensation system for a while, and I know that I can't tell you the number of, say, ruined backs that I saw. Just utter destruction of the lumbar spine among the coal industry. And yeah, you'd see what the treatment protocols were, and it was prescriptions for hydrocodone, OxyContin, things like that, because they had their bodies ruined by that industry. And then the coal company would fight them tooth and nail if they tried to get just compensation for themselves after the coal company had used them up and cast them aside. That sort of highlights the fact that this state, and over our long history, has been one in which people were treated as a disposable commodity. Does that still obtain? Does your generation see themselves being treated in the same way?
Most of my generation, a lot of people I know, are just trying to put food on the table for their children and themselves. And you see that same struggle because it's not a huge market to choose from with jobs. So, because of I've talked to my friends about it. You were either choosing from fast food, waitressing. Some people start their own businesses, or you're doing coal mining or truck driving. My husband drives a truck, and I know a lot of people my age that are going into the coal mines, that are going underground just to make a living, and because they feel like I'm not smart enough to go to school, and some of them haven't even completed high school, so they go into the coal mines because it's efficient money for a decent lifestyle. That way you don't have to, because coal mining you do make quite a bit of money in the coal mines. You do have health care, and it's pretty much a lot of people turn to that alternative because they're just trying to have a decent way of life. It's because why certain things that's happened recently, and you know what I'm talking about, Bob.
Yep.
That have drove me crazy because it's such a limited job market here. And it's not like Charlotte's where, if I lose my job at Bank of America and I worked on the 12th floor, I can go down the street, you know what I mean, to SunTrust or Chase, and I could still make about $80,000.
Yeah.
That's not how it is here.
No, it's not.
And a lot of people that don't live here do not get that concept.
Let me ask you this, Brianna. When you look at those lack of opportunities, do you get angry at the people who have been given the warnings about the coming collapse of the economy in Central Appalachia and have done nothing?
Yes, I do. And I've told them to their face too, Bob. This is no new information. The fact that you are being selfish like Bill Cole, for example, who blocked Tesla from coming in here and providing jobs because you want to be greedy. The fact that you have a good old boy system that only a few people benefit from and not the majority, it's horrible. And the corruption from county commission all the way up past Charleston is ridiculous. The fact that I don't know if you heard about this, Bob, but the building that used to be Walmart in McDowell County,
Right.
Rural King bought the building as a tax write-off. And I don't think anything's going to be done with that building. So,
you don't think they'll put a Rural King in it?
It's a tax write-off.
Because, boy, I tell you, I in fact, I did an entire segment on this program about the one in Beckley. It is for those who don't know, it's like a hillbilly Saks Fifth Avenue. Only instead of diamonds and furs, they've got Carhartts and well pumps and hog feed, and it's hillbilly Saks Fifth Avenue, and they got their guns and they got it, and free popcorn when you walk through the door. I mean, it would be a boost if they would turn that into a Rural King in McDowell County, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would, because there's a lot of farmers too in that area and the surrounding areas. Because I live on a farm, Bob. Because I get my feed from Rural King too, because it's cheaper than going to Tractor Supply or some other areas. Because I do have animals that I need to get feed for. And
please tell me you own a pair of bib. Please tell me you own a pair of bib overalls.
No, I do not.
Oh, darn.
No, I do not.
Well, somewhere along the way, you're gonna have to get a pair. I mean, you can't live on a farm and not own some bib overalls.
No, I have my little camo that I wear when I go out to clean out the animals with my husband and feed them. So. And
you've got your blaze orange that you wear when you do that during deer season, so that you won't be mistaken for a deer.
Yeah, so we have that because me and my husband, we do go out and do like hunting, things like that, because it's better than buying food from the stores, because the store stuff now has so much stuff in it. It's ridiculous when it comes to.
Oh yeah, by the way, good news. I saw a story right before I came on air. The Centers for Disease Control has announced that the Great American Poison Romaine lettuce crisis is finally over. It might finally be safe to eat a salad again. Jesus, because regulations that make sure that there's been no poop associated with your salad greens, those kill jobs, right? That's one of those job killing regulations that the Republicans go on about. Let me ask you a little bit about you worked through the primary season and everything, and now you're gonna continue to work through the general, but you're working with a candidate in South Dakota. Is that right?
Yes, I am. That's my girl. I love Allison Rainville. She's running for state senate out of South Dakota in District 1.
And she is in addition to being a woman running for office, she's also a Native American, correct?
Correct.
That's exciting. We got to. I got to chat with her a little bit last night, and I'll be having her on the program here in the next couple of weeks or so. How did you make that connection all the way to South Dakota? And I presume you're not going to South Dakota, right?
No, I'm going to be helping her from here in West Virginia, because of the skill set I have. I'll be able to help her with the necessities, and because people fail to realize that campaigns are more. There's more to campaigns than just field work, and with the needs that she has, I'm able to do it from home, because it's basically making phone calls, writing letters, getting in contact with a lot of people to help her out with her race in South Dakota. And Bob, I always tell people all the time, because I know a lot of people, across the country, that it's just because I'm Bree. The reason I know so many people, and actually I met her back in 2016 as well, with my efforts with Bernie Sanders and the water thing initiative that we were driving in 2016, that we're still driving now, along with clean air.
Right, because the two things go hand in hand, exactly.
Yeah. So pipeline protests. And we were sitting here dealing with the coal companies dumping stuff in our water.
Right, exactly.
So, we are both dealing with the water issue, and because people fail to realize that in southern West Virginia, we do have a water problem that has not been addressed.
Without a doubt.
And the air problem.
You've got, there's a water problem, there's an air problem, there's a soil problem. As we were talking about last night, the blasts are still going off in southern West Virginia from the production of coal. Now we've got pipelines crossing the state that will, at some point in time, not may, but will blow up. And then there's the fracking as well. And the thing is, all this is being done to people in Appalachia, and we're not allowed to have any benefit from it. I mean, we could at least tax frack gas enough to pay for a world-class school system, but we've got a bunch of political cravens in the legislature who lack the courage to look at a gas producer and say, listen, the gas will be here whenever you want to pay for the privilege to drill for it.
Exactly. And Bob, I've told people all the time, southern West Virginia should have the best school system in this country because of all the money that has came out of southern West Virginia with the coal industry. And I remember this, I quote from a certain state senator saying that we should just cut the road off to McDowell County. And it really, it really boiled me on the inside. Like, I was really angry. And I've always made this joke with my dad. I was like, Dad, as lighter-skinned African Americans, I said we turn red when we get angry. So I was actually red because when my grandparents were underground and giving these people more money than what they knew how to do with, that their cup was running over, you did not want to cut off that road to McDowell County, and the fact that these corrupt legislators are pocketing the money that needs to be in the community, because I swear, Bob, southern West Virginia should be looking like Charlotte or Atlanta. It should not. We should not be going through what we are going through. And people here really need to, they really need to realize that they have a voice. And I've heard this so many times, that my vote does not count, Brianna. I cannot change this. Yes, you can. Because they feel hopeless. And that's another problem with the opioid epidemic, is the fact that there's, this sense of like, I have a felony from the time I was 18 years old because I got caught with a little bit of marijuana. I can't get a job, and I don't have the money to travel an hour or two up the road or to Charleston to get work somewhere. So I'm going to either sell drugs or I'm going to get high. And that's another issue in itself. And the same people that complain about people selling drugs are the ones that won't give people a chance to hire them. They will not give them an initiative. Say, be like, okay, if you can get clean, be clean for 90 days, you'll have a job.
Well, I mean, honestly, when you look at things like drug testing requirements, does the fact that one smokes a little bit of cannabis really disqualify you from being able to be a clerk at the Rippy Mart?
No, it doesn't. But the fact that you have, I'm trying to put it as nicely as I can.
Oh, you don't have to be nice.
Okay, I don't have to be nice. Yay. The fact that we have get under my skin too, because Bob, I know you've seen me on Facebook over the years. I'm a huge critic of the church. I have pastors that are my friends. I do agree with, some aspects of religion, but the problem I'm seeing here is the stuff they say from the pulpit. Some of them, how they speak about marijuana, how they speak about this, how they speak about that, and they always criticize the people who are suffering, and they do nothing to help them. The fact that you're living in a poor area, and you're a pastor, and you drive a better car than your whole congregation, the fact that you do nothing to help the people in this area, but you stick your nose up at them and say that Jesus will, just believe in Jesus and he will fix it. That's not helping. And there are a few churches in this area, Bob, that will help. Don't get me wrong. Not every church down here is like this. There are people that are actually doing the right thing, that do hand out food, that will do clothing and things like that, that actually recognize the suffering that's going on and aren't on their high horse. The fact that we got churches that are worth more money than the homes that are surrounding it. So that's another thing too, the religious mentality that weed is bad, weed is this, weed is that, when in fact that weed could fix our problems.
Well, on more than one front, we have evidence now to suggest that it can provide a huge tax boost. But secondarily, hasn't Colorado taught us that when you legalize cannabis, your opioid problem goes down?
And yeah, it does. And I learned that from Colorado, Washington, and several states that have also been in the same boat as West Virginia, that has ended the opioid crisis, boost the tax economy. The fact that they now have, from legalizing marijuana in the first year, now have $700 million to go towards the schools. And we know, Bob, that West Virginia schools could benefit a lot from $700 million. And the fact that you're being selfish because you are being benefit. The only person that's getting any benefit is you as a legislator from Big Pharma. And you'd rather someone not be productive on Opanas because they're benefiting your friend who's a doctor, because the doctor, I'm sure, gets a portion of it, because from writing so much Opana, oxycodone, Loratab, you name it. Because I've seen it all in the drug screens, Bob. And I'm amazed that some of these people are still alive because of stuff that's been in their system. The fact that you would rather see people suffering and dying around you because you live in a nicer portion of town and you don't have to look at it, it's disturbing. And it's really messed up. And I really wish sometimes I could pull a Looney Tunes on some of these people. Like, do you remember back on, in the days of Bugs Bunny, where they would grab somebody and like ply their eyes open and so they can look at something? I wish I could really do that, to show them that, this is
or grab
what
them,
you are doing,
or grab them by the shirt collar and slap them back and forth across the face, going stupid. Yeah,
yes.
I grew up with Warner Brothers cartoons. I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, one thing becomes abundantly obvious through the course of this conversation, Brianna, and that is that with people like you. Working on the side of the angels, as it were, there is hope in this state. But you're working. You grew up in McDowell County. You know what it is to climb straight uphill, and that's kind of what you're doing now. And I hope there's some way for you to be able to stay here, that you don't have to become part of the hillbilly exodus. Because our state needs more of you and less of, We need more of you staying here than we need Patrick Morrissey's coming here. Let's put it that way.
Because the reason, Bob, that there's a possibility of me leaving, and I've told you this before, is because a big portion of my family is gone, Bob. It's not like it used to be when I was growing up, and I'm sorry if I cry on the air, but it's not like how it was when I used to see some of my cousins and my family members, on the weekends. And a big portion of them have gone to Charlotte, Atlanta, and things like that. And, because I always say that, I always pick on them saying that they're the Beverly Hillbillies or the West Virginia Hillbillies because they got rich and left. And that's what they did. And I don't, see them like I'm supposed to have missed out on their kids' lives. And the only way I get to see that is through social media.
I know what you're talking about, because my wife and I just traveled 6 hours to see to see family, because it's so strange. I wasn't born here. My parents were, and all the generations before them, and so this place has had a sort of romantic pull. Yeah, I know, crazy. And so my wife and I settled here, and we raised our family here. And now we're the only ones who are here. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And one of my kids is already gone from West Virginia, and others are trying to figure out a way to go. And I don't know. I can't look at them and tell them, no, you can't. One, they're too big to spank. And two, to stay is to court one's own doom. Yeah, and I understand that.
That's an issue, and Bob, because I'm glad you think so highly of me, because there's a lot of people that don't always appreciate my work, but especially when you have people that are supposed to be wearing the same jersey as you, trying to say things and do things, it's it can make my work a little harder, but I keep going, because it's for the better good of everyone else, because even though they say this and that, they don't see what I see on a daily basis, where you see people living below the poverty line turning on their water faucet, and the water is yellow, and you really can't drink the water.
Or stinks like something dead in the middle of the road. Exactly.
Yeah, and the fact that the air is getting polluted, and not to mention they're not spending their own money like I have over the years with my mother and stuff. Because there's been times where me and my mom, we've gone out and bought out of our own personal things, clothes for kids and shoes, because they didn't have winter clothes or shoes. And my husband and I have gave food out of our pantry to people that just really didn't have it. And that's how, the poverty issue, it's pretty bad here. And then not to mention, what the African American community is going through here too, because people fail to realize what is done and everything that you do with legislation wise affects the Black community first, and it hits them the hardest. And it really hits them hard too, being in West Virginia. And I've because they deal with police brutality here. Police brutality is relevant in southern West Virginia. No, we don't have the high Black population, but it affects them. The ratio is a little higher with contact, even though we are in a mostly white area. It does affect poor white people more so than it does your upper middle class and your rich white kids. So you got that police issue with the poor white community here and your Black community. Because people think, oh, it's West Virginia, it's this and the other. No, they do have a police brutality problem, along with everything else. They have a, with the school funding,
and there's no getting around there's no getting around the fact that white privilege diminishes with economic status.
Yeah.
The poorer white you are, the less privileged you're likely to feel. And and that's a conversation for an entire another day. And I hope there will be another day, Brianna. I cannot thank you enough for giving me an hour of your time this evening. I really, really appreciate it. I'll ask you one last question on the way out the door. What do you see happening? What do you see happening for November? Do you you've got a pretty good political sense? Do you see the big blue wave just inundating and washing away all the Republicans all over the country? Do you see a blue wave in West Virginia even?
Well, let me break down the districts for you, because there's a big difference between northern West Virginia and southern West Virginia for your out-of-state people, because northern part of West Virginia, like your Morgantown area, that's way more liberal than what it is down here. Because I had to go over that too with because I had a meeting with ACLU this morning about the West Virginia Constitution, where they're trying to change the West Virginia Constitution to where abortion is no longer protected. And I've asked them, like, what on earth do you expect me to do down here? Do you know how hard that is going to be to do down here? You know, it's bad enough that I have to help, that I'm, doing the Know Your Rights thing with them, with police brutality. I get, trying to get that initiative across the people and help people with that. Then you got to push the abortion initiative in a very red area, because we have a problem in southern West Virginia voting red, because they believe what everyone else is talking about, because word of mouth passes faster, and then you have the same people running for office, name recognition, and where the Republicans are getting all these extra sponsorship from coal company, Coke, and all these other places. That's a problem, and I see it being red in my area. I see it being very red still. Now, in District 1, I see Kendra Freshie winning. In District 1, I see that.
That's the Democrat that's up in northern West Virginia.
Oh, yes. And if you ever have the pleasure of meeting Miss Freshie, she is a force to be reckoned with. She is something else, Bob. She is. Now, with the 2nd district, it's going to be a close race. It's going to be close between Tally Sargent and Mooney. I think that's going to be extremely close. And one or the other is going to barely make it. I see them making it maybe by 3%. That's going to be a close one.
And then that leaves the district where I live.
Mhm. So.
And there's a there's a Democratic nominee, and there's a how best can the crazy Christian lady. And when I say, I'm not talking about, lives the whole Matthew 25 thing. I'm talking about one of the kind of people that I refer to as an evangelical. And she's got the Republican nomination. And, oh, God, she will make, if she gets through, she will make Evan Jenkins look like Bernie Sanders. Is that
oh, my Lord.
Is that a fair approximation?
Yes, Lord. But
I think I just hurt you. I'm sorry.
Yes, Lord. I already know this race. It's because you know how I feel about both of them, Bob.
Yep.
You know how I feel, and I'd rather have my liquor straight. At least I know what's coming with her. At least I know what's coming. It's more so with the other candidate, because I'm not going to express my personal feelings in the air with that, but for multiple reasons. But I do see her appealing to the evangelical.
Oh, the same
area.
Yeah, the same bunch that responded to Jenkins, the same bunch that has voted for every other lunatic right winger that has been put forward, and they've got enough political power to get a lot of work done. It's just
Yeah.
And then that leaves. Well, how about let me? There's no way we can break it all down. But is there any hope? Is there any hope for the West Virginia legislature?
West Virginia legislator.
I mean, there's some good Democratic candidates. There's some good progressive candidates who have made it through.
It's going to be hit and miss, depending on the area. Now, we do have some strong women running, Bob, in this area. Like in West Virginia, we have, let me think of the ones that are running out of the northern part of the state. You have Danielle Walker as one, and she's force to be reckoned with. You have Breanne Solomon. You have I'm trying to think of her name.
Well, Lisa Lucas didn't she didn't even face much in the way of primary competition. So
no,
and thanks to the fact that she was shut down in the House talking about fracking, she built for just a district House race a formidable war chest just out of what was done to her by the Republicans forcing her to be quiet.
Oh yeah, and you have also Carla Jones. You have Phoebe, who ran this time. That was amazing. Phoebe Meadows, she did really good, along with Carol Bailey that lost to John Schott in the House of Delegates race in Mercer County, and along with several others, including Amanda Estep Burton and others that are running. Sammy Brown didn't make it in her race, which shocked me, but it was barely by a little bit. And I hope Sammy does run again, because she is amazing, and I think that she is someone that we really need to see in West Virginia, along with James Elam, which I'm surprised James Elam lost in Charleston. But I think for that type of liberal, because James would be exceptional in the House of Delegates. I think that our state is not ready for that type of potential yet with him being that liberal, but I think that he might have a chance again in either maybe in the next 2020 or 2022, in the near future with his candidacy, if he keeps running and he keeps going at it, along with some of these other women as well that are running. We saw a huge wave of women running this year, which was amazing. We saw like hit and miss with the legislative, like the state senators, because it depends on what part of the state you're going to be going for. And the problem is, when I was working my state senate race back in 2016, we won 3 out of 4 counties as a Democrat, and the reason we lost was due to Mercer County. And Mercer County is very red, and it is gerrymandered.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a issue. It is, the gerrymandering is really bad. And if we can find, as Democrats in this state, if we can quit backing the wrong people and start backing the right people that actually have a chance, to get the point of view across, if we start welcoming more people and more ideas instead of pushing them out over a minor whatever, then we could actually go somewhere. I think that we need to stop preaching and start listening to the needs of the people in this area, because a lot of people in southern West Virginia feel a disconnect between our area and Charleston and Huntington. They look at those people the same way they look at people in D.C. And we need to get off our high horse and come down to ground zero and go on Main Street and start winning these people over, from the churches to going up these hollers to talking to people that even have the most conservative racist ideologies, because people can change. They can. I've seen people change, Bob, because I've seen the most racist person in the world end up having a mixed grandchild and fall in love with that baby. You know, if we have a different approach to things and start compromising and realizing we can't die on every mountain, you know, it actually might work.
Smarten up and pick our
winning
battles.
the people over.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Brianna, thank you very kindly for your time this evening, and do stay in touch. And you're welcome here most any time. I hope you know that.
Thank you. Hopefully, I can get back on air with you in the next few weeks. Your listeners will hear from me again in the next few weeks, or maybe a month or so, just depending on how much I want to torment myself. My work.
I understand, and hey, look, you survived. I told you it would be a lot easier than you thought it would be. Next thing you know, just next thing you know, it's just like a conversation across the back fence. It's just that easy. Brianna Wade Piercy, again, thank you for your tireless work. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your vision, and we will talk soon.
All right, thank you, Bob.
You have a good night now.
You too.
Bye now. Again, that is activist and political. Well, I think you could call her a political consultant. Brianna Wade Piercy, campaign staffer, presently working for Allison Renville out in South Dakota in her state Senate race there. So it is. It's about 16 minutes past the hour, and we've got lots of thorns to deal with for this Thorn in the Side Thursday. And hopefully you'll stick around for all of that. There's always the phones. If you want to get involved in the program and engage in some conversation, you're free to do that. 304-574-8178 is the number. We've got the Green News Report with Brad Friedman and Desi Doyen coming up. And after that, we will see just exactly where the conversation takes us, because there are lots of different places we can go. Just a hint, just a little bit of a tease. Do you remember back when Republicans in Alabama were running for the seat vacated by United States Attorney General Jefferson Davis Beauregard Sessions III? One of those people running for that seat was a guy named Mo Brooks, and I said that if there were any subversives in Alabama, there would have been there would have been a billboard campaign with a big slogan that said, "Mo Brooks, less brains." Well, not that I'm a prophet or anything. But, he proved that true. And I'll say as we head to the break, we have two challenges on the table to help knock down some of the fundraising gap we've got for the program. We have a $25 challenge courtesy of Randy and PA, the When Billionaires Choose, You Lose challenge. Thank you, Randy. And we've got a challenge on the table from Chris in Germany as well at the amount of $25. So that could knock out $100 easily if those two challenges are met. And thanks very kindly to our buddy Matt in San Francisco, who wrote me a little bit ago and said, "Put me in for $200, Bob." Thank you, Matt. That's breathtakingly wonderful. So all that taken together means that we can climb out of the hole a little bit this evening if people respond to the challenges and go into tomorrow a lot less scared than at the end of the week, than a lot less scary than what it is as it presently stands. Okie doke. So again, the number 304-574-8178 if you want to talk about whatever's on your mind. Toll free from anywhere in the U.S., I guess. 844-843-4676. That's 844-THE-HORN. And then from anywhere on the planet, Skype to Skype, Bob Kincaid horn. And that's a free call via Skype. Bob Kincaid horn, BobKincaidHorn. So, yep, we'll take a break and come back and see which way the program takes us. I'm Bob Kincaid. This is listener-supported Conversation Radio.
Got that sweet mountain soul down in my bones. I can feel it when I sing them lonesome songs. I can tell by the way I feel that it comes from somewhere else. I got that sweet mountain soul down in my bones. Got that sweet mountain spirit down in my veins, and it flows through my heart like a mountain rain. And no matter where I might roam, these hills and hollers are my home. I got that sweet mountain spirit down in my veins. Some people call me hillbilly. Some people call me mountain man. You can call me Appalachia. Appalachia's what I am. Got that sweet Appalachia all over me. Look at me, Appalachia is what you see. And no matter where I might roam, Appalachia is my home. I got that sweet Appalachia all over me. I got that sweet mountain soul down in my bones. I got that sweet mountain spirit down in my veins. I got that sweet Appalachia all over me.
It's Thursday, May 17, 2018.
As I look back on those decisions, I would not make the same decisions again.
EPA Chief Scott Pruitt, who still has a job, gets grilled by Democratic senators.
In some cities, every single road shut down.
Extreme storms killed 5 in the northeastern U.S. King County, Washington files climate liability lawsuit against major oil companies. Plus,
if they're exercising during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, they may want to consider not exercising outside.
New study finds air pollution dangers extend into the womb.
All of those dangers and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I love cold country. My lungs are so black I once had the hiccups and a canary flew out.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, in our last Green News Report, you had a story on how global warming is making storms worse. And what do you know? Today we have terrible storms on the East Coast.
Yes, a large and very dangerous storm system caused severe damage in the Northeast this week, including generating 3 tornadoes in New York State, where Governor Andrew Cuomo declared a state of emergency. The storm's record-setting high winds caused the deaths of at least 5 people, knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of people, triggered flash floods, and forced the closure of some regional rail lines. It's another reminder to be sure that you and your family are prepared for these increasing intense extreme weather events. In politics, Trump Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt got a grilling from Democrats in a Wednesday Senate Appropriations Committee hearing.
Grilled Pruitt.
Democratic Senator Tom Udall of New Mexico excoriated Pruitt over the 12 separate probes and investigations into his spending and ethics scandals.
12 official federal investigations of this guy.
Yes, the Inspector General of the EPA said that he will now investigate Pruitt's use of secret private email addresses that bypass public records laws, but it may have to wait until he gets a bigger budget.
He was using secret email addresses.
Right.
A private server.
Yes.
Lock him up.
Here's Senator Tom Udall at that hearing.
Administrator Pruitt, it's hard to know where to begin this morning. Every day there seems to be a new scandal and you at dead center. I'm tempted to say your scandals are a mere sideshow distracting us from the long-lasting devastation your leadership is making on human health and the environment.
Tempted to say, he just said it.
Also in that hearing, Administrator Pruitt claimed that the controversies were mostly overblown, but he did admit
that as I look back on those decisions, I would not make the same decisions again. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those.
Oh, just a few.
And the administrator denied knowing that his own employees helped block a federal study showing toxic chemicals are contaminating water systems across the country.
And that study has still not been released.
Right. Meanwhile, just one of the costs of shifting the burden of pollution to the public, a new study has found that the harm of air pollution extends even into the womb. They found that children of mothers who were exposed in their 3rd trimester to fine particles of air pollution from fossil fuels had a 60% higher risk of elevated blood pressure, and that has lifelong negative health impacts, according to lead author Dr. Noel Mueller of Johns Hopkins University.
Children who have elevated blood pressure in childhood have a higher probability of having hypertension later in life and cardiovascular diseases.
Another type of pollution, plastic, has now been discovered in the deepest part of the ocean. A plastic bag was found in the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, some 7 miles beneath the surface. A new analysis documented nearly 3,500 pieces of plastic pollution and fishing gear on the deep sea floor. Some countries and cities have begun to ban single-use plastic products to address the growing scourge of plastic pollution in the ocean. But some good news, a federal appeals court has ordered a halt to construction on some portions of Dominion Energy's controversial Atlantic Coast Pipeline on the grounds that a permit granted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is inadequate to protect 6 endangered species along its route. And finally, in Washington state, King County, home to the city of Seattle, has filed a climate liability lawsuit against 5 giant oil companies. The county is seeking damages to help pay for the costs of dealing dealing with accelerating climate change impacts like sea level rise, extreme weather events, and ocean acidification, which is harming Washington state's shellfish industry. It's the latest in a wave of lawsuits modeled after the tobacco industry litigation, alleging that the oil companies knew burning their products caused dangerous global warming, but misled the public and investors about it.
These companies are going to pay a price. The question is, will we pay it before they do? I think we already have. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
We are exactly at the halfway point of the program, this Thorn in the Side Thursday on the Horn. And we've got a correction coming in from Darlene in Connecticut for Brad and Desi. Darlene writes, excuse me, Brad and Desi, but Connecticut got hit by 4 tornadoes and several macro bursts. For once, we beat New York. Just saying. Yeah, but that's winning in a bad way, Darlene. I can only wonder. I mean, y'all aren't supposed to be getting tornadoes. Pretty much neither is New York. I wonder what could possibly be the cause of that. Oh, wait. Has there been an increase in New York and Connecticut? In the number of Baptist churches, because it seems like everywhere there's a high concentration of Southern Baptists, God rewards them with tornadoes. Because it couldn't possibly be like climate change, could it? It is, in fact, Thorn in the Side Thursday. We got a pair of challenges on the table. And some big help coming in from Matt in San Francisco. So hopefully those will get met. The two $25 challenges from both Chris and Randy. This is one of those stories that you read and you go and you double check the URL. To make sure that it doesn't have like a misplaced letter in the URL that's a giveaway, that it's not a real site, that somehow or another it might be some sort of parody or Onion wannabe. Because frankly, if this had come out of the Onion, you'd go, damn, that's funny. Oh my God, that's some. Oh, and a quick clarification. The toll-free number is for all of North America, by the way, 844-843-4676. That's all of North America. That's Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So hopefully, I don't know. It'd be nice to get some calls from the Canadian members of the Horn Family Community Congregation, or the Mexican members of the Horn Family Community Congregation. If you ever wanted to call in and dog cuss Donald J. Trump, this is the very place to do that. Yes. Yeah, Marty, I was sort of taken aback by that, too. Marty points out, plastic bag at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Call Jim Cameron. Either he left it down there or his little submersible is the thing to go down and bring it back up. Let's go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and pick up our trash. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so like I said, this story has Onion written all over it. Unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, this is real news. This is a real, live, honest-to-goodness, no kidding, news story. This calls for a hockey puck warning and several loops of duct tape just to keep it snug while you're screaming and frothing at the mouth at the manifest ignorance of it all. Scott Waldman over at E&E News wrote the story. Headline: where's that tequila bottle with that swirly straw when I need it? Because this is one of them. Headline: Republican lawmaker, rocks tumbling into ocean causing sea level rise. That's a real headline to a real news story to something that really happened in Washington, D.C. Because today, up in the Congress, it's up from here, down to some of y'all. Today up in the Congress, they had a meeting of the, sarcastically at this point in time, named House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. That's the House of Representatives Science, Space, and Technology Committee. I repeat that because I don't want there to be any mistakes that this was the Clown Cars and Silly Hat Committee. This was the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. It happened yesterday, not today. And, of course, there's a Republican majority, so that means that the committee is run by Republicans. And it is apparently run by some of the most drop-dead, stupid Republicans that we have on offer today. And I guess that makes sense because you'd want to put your more moronic Republicans on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee because, well, Republicans don't think much of science, space, or, technology. Ooh, the stupid is strong with these ones. I think Silent R. Lamar knows where this story is going because he goes, Bob, this is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Well, the purpose of the hearing, and sometimes, the hearings go off the rails, and instead of being about what they're supposed to be for, isn't what the hearing winds up being about. Supposedly, the topic under discussion was how modern technology could be best put to use in order to adapt to climate change. And despite the Republicans and the GOP generally, and the various and sundry levels and types of science deniers, there are aspects of our government that are paying very close attention to climate change and are quite certain that it's real. One of those being the military of the United States, whether it be the Marines, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, well, the Coast Guard would know, the Navy, the Army. I'm not sure if we've got those Space Marines that Geezer Disgustus says he wants to. They're not on board quite yet. But I mean, jumping Jesus, really? Yeah, really. So, called to testify before the Science, Space, and Technology Committee was Philip Duffy, And Marty mentioning Jim Cameron, he worked with various scientists, some of his projects. Robert Ballard comes to me. Because Philip Duffy is president of the Woods Hole Research Center up in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. He's also the former senior advisor to the United States Global Change Research Program. So he qualifies as an expert. Enter Mo Brooks, less brains. He harangued Philip Duffy after Lamar Smith had, after Chair Dana Rohrabacher had. Dana Rohrabacher, isn't he the favorite House Republican of the folks over in Mother Russia? Hasn't he been described as such? Well, never mind. Mo Brooks harangued Philip Duffy by telling him that he was bothered by the degree to which climate scientists have not embraced, wait for it, I mean, this is not easy to get through. I mean, this is like swimming in pudding, okay? You don't make a lot of progress, and it gets pretty frustrating after a while. Mo Brooks, less brains, of Alabama, is irked because climate scientists aren't paying enough attention to the degree to which erosion plays a role in sea level rise. Looking at Philip Duffy of the Woods Hole Institute, and not laughing, not winking, not nudging, pointed, with the elbow or any of that, Mo Brooks, less brains, pointed out that the coastline of the state of California, the Californians in the Horn Family Community Congregation are about to start barking like prairie dogs and hooting like barn owls. The coastline of California, as well as the White Cliffs of Dover in England, are what is responsible for sea level rise. Portions, he said, of the California coastline and the White Cliffs of Dover tumble into the sea every year and cause sea level to rise. He also pointed to the silt that washes down in, to the mouth, the delta of the Mississippi River, or the delta of the Amazon River. And having mentioned the Amazon, our friend Flavio in Wisconsin is now kicking furniture and probably shrieking in Portuguese, and several other languages of which Flavio has command. All that silt causes sea level to rise all over the planet. Looking at Philip Duffy, not winking, not smirking, nothing, he said, "Every time you have that sol or rock or whatever it is," it's the whatever it is part that makes it art, really. "Every time you have that soil or rock or whatever it is that is deposited into the seas, that forces the sea levels to rise, because now you have less space in those oceans, because the bottom is moving up, moving on up." No, he said that. This is one of those moments where it's handy to know your Mark Twain so that you can immediately, just to get a sort of tonic prophylaxis for the stupid, you can go and read How I Edited an Agricultural Journal, which used to be, the first time I ever read it, way back. I was stricken by gales of laughter of how utterly ridiculous it was. I ain't laughing anymore. Oh no, Silent R. Lamar, we're all going to ride this through together. Silent R. Lamar says, "Oh, please turn off the stupid. My head hurts." It's going to get worse, Silent R. Yeah, now, Philip Duffy, to his credit, did not just explode into paroxysms of Tourette's-like swearing. Tourette's reminds me of a story. While we were gone this past weekend, and I should say by way of preface that from the time I was little, I have always had a little bit of a tremble. Maybe it was because when my mother was carrying me, she smoked like a chimney, and God only knows what kind of particulate pollution she was breathing alongside the cigarette smoke. But I've always had a little tremble, and one of the folks at the family gathering noticed it. It was in my right hand. It just shakes a little bit. If you've ever seen the scene in Blazing Saddles where Sheriff Bart, and Gene Wilder's character are first meeting, he says, "Yeah, I couldn't shoot anymore. I got the shakes." And he holds up his left hand, and it's rock solid. And he says, and Sheriff Bart says, "Your hand doesn't shake." And then he holds up his right hand, and it's just trembling all over. He says, "Yeah, but this is the one I shoot with." Well, it wasn't anything like that. It was just a little tiny tremble. I can look down and see it now. But one of the folks walked up to me and said, "That's an early warning sign of Tourette's." And what are you going to do in that moment? I just turned and said, "Well, I'll be dipped. I had no idea. Thanks for telling me." Because the urge to just turn and say, something incredibly vulgar, and no, that's not an early warning sign of Tourette's. I've already got it. I've had it for years. Breathe, Silent R. Lamar, breathe. Too late, he says. My eyes have rolled up in my head. Thanks, Bob. Stop telling us how to respond to the stupid, Bob. But anyway, Philip Duffy responded patiently and did not burst into spontaneous Tourette's-like swearing. He simply maintained his composure and said to Mo Brooks, less brains, "I'm pretty sure that on human timescales those are minuscule effects." This did not slow down Mo Brooks, less brains. He said, Mo Brooks, less brains, went on to harp on Antarctic increases in Antarctic ice. And I presume Dr. Duffy said, "We have satellite records clearly documenting a shrinkage of the Antarctic ice sheet and an acceleration of that shrinkage." Somebody give that man a really fancy bottle of cognac, or I don't know, a quarter pound of sour banana sherbet weed or something like that, just because he earned it. because he didn't just go barking mad at the stupidity with which he was being confronted. Because Mo Brooks, less brains, then said, well, I'm sorry, but I don't know where you're getting your information, but the data I have seen suggests, and at that point in time, Duffy just said, I guess his patience wore a little thin, and he said, the National Snow and Ice Data Center and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And this just got, all that just ran through Mo Brooks' less brains like a dose of salt. And he said, well, I've got a NASA base in my district. Because he does. He represents Huntsville, Alabama, where the Marshall Space Flight Center is located, and the Space and Rocket Center. I got a NASA base in my district, and apparently they're telling you one thing and me a different thing. But there are plenty of studies that have come that show with respect to Antarctica that the total ice sheet, particularly that above land, is increasing, not decreasing. Now, you could make a different argument if you want to talk about Greenland or the Arctic. Ooh. You know why they're telling you something different, Mo? Because they have to communicate with you on a sub-first grade level, you fucking moron. You godforsaken dumbass. You addle-pated booby. And then, of course, it wasn't Mo Brooks, less brains' turn to be stupid anymore. And it was the turn of Bill Posey, a Republican from Florida. It was his turn to be stupid. Let's check in with the mail real quick. Earther says, yeah, Kincaid, rocks and sea level. And what about those overweight nudist European bathers? They take a bath after one of their many government-funded sex orgies. And you're telling me that won't raise sea levels? Damn it, Earther. You do that way too well. It's worrisome. Poor Jim, our buddy Jim, has been... I think he's been rendered near speechless. My Lord, this sea level thing, I can't call it anything else, but it is dangerous. Well, hell yeah. I mean, you don't want to be standing around under the California coastline when a whole bunch of California coastline falls right off into the damn ocean and raises the sea level there. Much more of that happens and San Francisco will be effing gone. What about Seattle? Vancouver? We're really taking a toll on Silent R. Lamar this evening. Okay, it's time to run on the freeway in the nude. Check your news channel. Yeah, I know. 12-car pileup on the 605 due to a 6-foot, 350-pound black male found running across lanes in the nude, barking something about Mo Brooks, less brains. Yep. Clarence with a note says, sea level rise. Mo is an effing moron, and that's a fact. Restating the obvious, Clarence. Thank you very kindly, my friend. Bill in Allentown. Mo Brooks, less brains. Mo was on Washington. Oh, no. No, he wasn't. Mo was on Washington. Yes, he was. Mo was on Washington Journal this morning. I don't know what he was supposed to be talking about because every time Mo was asked a question by either the moderator or a caller, his answer made me yell at the TV, and I never got to hear him. I knew it. I mentioned the Amazon Delta, and there's Flavio. Subject line, regrets. Why the hell did I go to college and even on to graduate school and indebted myself and scraped and clawed and scratched and clawed some more and kept my nose to the grindstone and jumped through the hoops and got the degrees when all I had to do is get elected to public office with a GED from Bob Jones University? Fuck me! Look, Flavio, breathe, brother, breathe. It's a matter of understanding the fundamental differences between left and right in this country. It's like this program. We struggle from month to month. We also use words with 3, sometimes 4, maybe even 5 syllables. We conduct conversations at high school level language usage parameters. And it's everything we can do to stay on the air. On the other hand, over in right-wing world, Mo Brooks has to have help tying his shoelaces in the morning. That was a pet peeve of my father. I'd say, well, let me tie my shoe. Stop, I got to tie my shoe. And my father would say, I want to see you do that. I want to see you tie your shoe. Tie your shoelaces, boy. Furnace operator and a former coal miner with a 12th grade education, he was paying attention. I figure Mo Brooks gets up every morning and actually does try to tie his shoes. Because over in wingnut world, you can have an IQ in negative numbers, and you can be richer than your wildest imaginings. Because there are all kinds of wingnut welfare operations. And they've so thoroughly intimidated even the reasonably intelligent operations that somebody like, say, Barry Weiss over at the New York Times, the opinion page editor, no less, a hopeless wingnut who writes panegyrics to Nazis. Oh, maybe that wasn't her. Maybe that was somebody else. But anyway, no, she wrote some piece of crap a couple of weeks ago about the bold thinkers of the right who who labor in obscurity and only get on TV every other week or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, even the New York Times provides wingnut welfare to people like Barry Weiss and who's that? Who's the climate change denier goober who came over from the Wall Street Journal? It's everywhere, Flavio. It's everywhere. I mean, Jesus jumping Christ. We talked about xenophobic rage Barbie, Tommy Lauren, shrieking about immigrants who don't want to assimilate and don't speak English, and how the genealogist ran down her family vine. You know, trees grow upward. It's a family vine. It just sort of spreads outward and crawls along the ground. She responded to the fact that her ancestors were pointed out as never having assimilated into the culture, having to have their baptismal certificates written in Norwegian, and a great-granny who never spoke a lick of English and spoke German here in the United States till the day she died. And she said that that proved that, that they were just, that the liberals were out to get her because liberals want open borders. Not kidding. No, not kidding. But anyway, back to Mo Brooks' Les Brains. Robert in Australia says, subject line, dumber than 2 bags of hammers. A quick check indicates that there are approximately 1,335,000,000 cubic kilometers of water in the oceans. Oh no, this is one of those word problems that always bedeviled me in my school years. How many rocks do you think need to fall into the ocean to raise sea level 1 meter? If that amount of water is equal to, holy shit, let's see, that's hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, gazillions, 352 times 10 to the 352 times 10 to the 21st gallon-sized milk containers. If that amount of water is equal to 352 times 10 to the 21st gallon-sized milk containers, I don't know how to say that number either. Robert predicted me. P.S. This gets a cowbell. When's the U.S. gonna go metric? Well, shit, that'd be 4 times as many, 'cause them liters ain't near as big as a gallon. Like, half the planet. Science means nothing to these people unless they need it. Science means something to Mo Brooks' less brains if he starts clutching at his chest and feels sharp pains running down his left arm, or if he goes to the bathroom and it feels like there's lightning in his urine stream. Then science matters. But on a dated, and this is part of why climate change is such a godforsaken problem, because, well, it's not impacting people on a daily basis. Oh no, not the motorcycle. It's not. If a tornado blows through Connecticut, and there are some wingnuts nearby, they'll say it was God's will, or they'll thank God that the satanic tornado didn't strike them, and cite that as a manifestation of providence in blessing them for being such good Christians. Or they'll just say, well, that's the kind of thing you get when tornadoes blow through Connecticut. Because their entire world is cognitive dissonance. Lee in New York says, Mo Brooks does try to tie his shoelaces, Bob. The problem is he bought loafers. Wait a minute. Have you ever tried to tie those tiny little threads in Velcro? It's goddamn near impossible. By the way, says Lee, what did Mo do with Larry and Curly? Meanwhile, Jim says, a man this stupid as Mo Brooks' less brains is truly an accident waiting to happen. Truthfully, I'm not surprised. Yeah, but I am. He grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, that used to be kind of a jewel of public education. Maybe he went to one of those Jesus schools. I don't know. Lee reminds us Senator Inhofe knows that if he can make a snowball, the climate gets cold, not warm. By the way, do these people know that the world is flat because their maps were on paper and in a book? Must make sense to them. Well, it's like when you open that Google Maps thingy, you never see the whole planet now, do you? You only see the flat part. Mm-hmm. And you can zoom in, and it's just flat, 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 flat. No, Bill Posey of Florida brought up the worn, threadbare argument about scientists said in the 1970s that the Earth was cooling. Philip Duffy, did not start howling or barking, and said, well, that was a position held by people who really weren't in the mainstream of science, and that at the same time and before then, scientists were understanding that human beings were warming the planet. So then, thinking he had really got that egghead, pointy-headed Duffy representing Posey, said, how come it is that carbon dioxide could be captured in permafrost in periods before humans existed? How come there was carbon dioxide if there wasn't no humans, smart man? Huh? You tell me that. There wasn't no people. We didn't have no soda pop. Carbon dioxide's in soda pop. Soda pop's good for you. I ain't never felt hot after I drank a cold bottle of Coca-Cola. I feel cool. At this point, Philip Duffy said, well, that carbon dioxide was generated by non-decayed organic matter. But human activity is making the Arctic get all warm and thawing the ground and releases the carbon into the atmosphere. Somewhere around probably the words non-decayed organic matter representing Posey's eyes rolled back in his head. Well, all right, Mr. Smarty Smart, said Representing Posey. What do you say to people who theorize that the Earth, as it continues to warm, is returning to its normal temperature, huh? What about that, smart man from Massachusetts? And given that the fact that the quote coming from Mr. Duffy begins with the word look, one senses that his frustration was rising. Look, if you want to characterize a temperature above today's temperature as normal, you're free to do that, but that doesn't mean that's a planet we want to live on. Yeah, how about the normal temperature of Venus there, Representing Posey? You're free to go there. And Posey followed that up, having just been dunked over. I don't want to get philosophical. I'm trying to stay on science here. And you can tell it's getting a little heated because Duffy said, well, I'm not getting philosophical either. I'm getting extremely practical. I'm being extremely practical. If we let the planet warm 2 or 3 degrees, we will have tens of meters of sea level rise, and the community where I live will essentially cease to exist. At which point, Representing Posey began to backpedal because he's from Florida, which isn't going to be there in a couple of 100 years. Sorry, barking. Oops. And he said, I don't think anybody disputes that the Earth is getting warmer. I think what's not clear is the exact amount of who caused what, and getting to that is, I think, where we're trying to go with this here committee. And we haven't even gotten to the Lamar Smith part. Or the bulk of the Dana Rohrabacher part. And let's take care of the Dana Rohrabacher part for a moment here, shall we? Those of us with some sort of passing introduction to formal logic and rational thinking will be sent right up a tree with this. But, just hang on. Rohrabacher said that he's upset because established climate science has not been questioned more by his committee. Well, what's left to question when you just deny it outright? What other questions are there to ask? Should we drown the climate scientists or burn them at the stake? Kill the heretics. He said, this ain't easy. I'm a little bit disturbed by number one. Over and over again, I hear don't ever talk about whether mankind is the main cause of the temperature changing and the climate changing. That's a little disturbing to hear, constantly beaten into our heads in a science committee meeting, when basically we should all be open to different points of view. Whoop. Science is not about points of view. Science doesn't have a point of view. There's no such thing as Republican science and Democratic science. There's no such thing as conservative science and liberal science. There's only science. There's only Zool. God, I thought about that the other day. You know, one of these days there's going to be an official presidential portrait of Geezer disgustus and melanoma. And his will probably have those glowing eyes. And there is no Trump, only Zool. We basically, we should all be open to different points of view. That is religion. That's for the religion committee, the different points of view. It's not for the science committee. The only question the science committee needs to be asking is, does it withstand the rigors of the scientific method? And the answer with regard to climate change is yes, it does. Does alleging that rocks falling off into the ocean at Big Sur causes climate change withstand the rigorous inquiry of the scientific method? No, it doesn't. Therefore, that point of view is, and I want to use a proper scientific term, utter bullshit. But having then set the stage, representing Lamar Smith of Texas, who has more climate change oil company money than he can shake a stick at. Well, he wanted to lecture Dr. Duffy as well. And he entered an article into the record, an opinion piece because it's a well-known scientific journal. He entered an opinion piece from the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch. It was a piece by Fred Singer, who is not exactly a well-known climate scientist. He's a hack associated with the Heartland Institute. And the Heartland Institute is, well, you can look them up and find out who funds them. You will not be surprised. And their entire purpose is to reject the entirety of the science around climate change. And his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days before claimed that sea level rise is not being caused by climate change. It's being caused by unicorns. No. Hillary. No. Black people. No. Anything but climate change. Something's causing the rock chalk falling off the white cliffs of Dover. That's why they're white. They're chalk. Mm-hmm. And so he lectured Dr. Duffy by saying, to solve climate change challenges, we first need to acknowledge the uncertainties that exist. Then we can have confidence that innovations in technology will enable us to mitigate any adverse consequences of climate change. Acknowledge the uncertainties. That's right up there with teach the controversy, another bullshit theory from the right wing. They deny something scientific, and then they say, well, there's a controversy, so we've got to teach the fact that we deny established science. And the nation gets a little more stupid. So then he showed a couple of slides. And the slide had two charts. And he said that it proved that the increase in use of fossil fuels had nothing to do with climate change or sea level rise. And he said that his chart, by God, because he's got a chart, damn it, a chart. He said his chart proved that sea level only rose a little bitty bit, even though our fossil fuel use went way the hell up. Look here, it's right here on the chart. And that's when Dr. Duffy looked at Lamar Smith and said, Congressman, your chart there is one data point from one tidal gauge station that's located near San Francisco. And Congressman, sea level rises at different rates at different parts of the globe. And so the rates from one tidal station, one tidal gauge near San Francisco is not representative of the whole fucking planet. And he also said, while you were at it, you didn't show rising atmospheric CO2 levels. You didn't show rising temperatures, and both are on the uptick. And he said the rate of global sea level rise has accelerated and is now 4 times faster than it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago. And Smith said, well, smarty science, smarty. Is the chart inaccurate then? And Dr. Duffy said, well, it's accurate, but it doesn't represent what's happening globally. It represents what's happening in San Francisco. This is like an actual scientist going in and trying to explain climate change to Republican members of Congress is probably more difficult than trying to teach calculus to Neanderthals, because the Neanderthals at least had big brains. Yes, you're exactly right. Earther says, look, as in what Dr. Duffy said, look is a euphemism for, look, dumbass. The dumbass goes unstated, yes. Randy in PA says, quotes Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great thing about science is that it's true, whether you believe in it or not. Robert in Australia says, using science to adapt to global warming, just build Logan's Run domes over every important city, run an exhaust pipe outside, turn up the AC, and you're set until it's your time for carousel. Carousel 2341. Capricorn. Carousel awaits. Robert adds, there's nothing more annoying than U.S. TV series that still use imperial measurements. I know. But I haven't seen. Oh, okay, good. Okay, Jim says this kind of pseudoscience has been with us. Not talking about actual climate change, but the dumbasses on the Republican side Check out the Nazi ice world theory. Lee says, what is a science? Many years ago, a teacher gave me a good definition of a science. In a science, any idea runs the risk of being disproved. This is why astronomy is a science and astrology is not. When I was young, Pluto was a planet included in astrological charts and always correct. A century ago, Pluto had not been discovered. The astrological charts were always correct. Now Pluto is a dwarf planet, but all the astrological charts are always correct and have always been correct. There's always been a lottery. Lottery in June, corn heavy soon. Ron and Raleigh says, remember that letter I sent you the other day from the fellow that insisted that there should be a 50-50 hiring split for college professors because conservatives are underrepresented on campus? Gee, I wonder why. Oh, but eventually they'll get their wish. And then college won't be worth a damn anymore. And actual learning won't take place inside the United States. Where it used to be that people who wanted to push their academic boundaries as high and as far as they could go would come to the United States. I can't wait to see what happens to Caltech and MIT when the evangelicals finally gain control, and all equations have to instead of having an equal sign, there will be a little cross, not plus. It has, the transept will be taller, and it'll mean that Jesus made a miracle, and the result happened therefore. Like I said, we've had a lot of thorn in the side stories. This one is one for the ages. Oh, I'm sorry. Rohrbacher doesn't run that committee. Lamar Smith runs the committee. God, I remember when another one said that wind turbines might blow the planet Earth out of its orbit. Holy mackerel. So we've still got two challenges on the table for $25 each, courtesy of Chris in Germany and our buddy Randy in PA. It would be nice if those were met. Thank you very kindly, if you will. We got more thorns, but let's run over to the phones for a minute. Hey, welcome to the program.
Bob?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. It's Darlene from Connecticut.
Oh, Darlene, what a joy to hear from you.
Yeah, it's been a while, huh?
This is our second call.
Actually, I think it might be our third because I think I called you a couple of times the last time that I spoke to you, which I'm thinking might have been about 6 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long, but it was when the ACA was coming online.
Yes, because there were two calls. You're absolutely right.
And I was struggling with the Access Health CT and trying to sign up.
Yes.
For health insurance. And just to conclude that, what happened there, if you recall, I wrote...
when last we checked in with Darlene 6 years ago, yes.
It was a 4-page rant about all the trouble that I was having and how ill-prepared many of the hospitals were and doctors' offices, and some were in denial. They didn't want to be part of the exchanges and, that kind of thing. And I sent in this 4-page letter to all of my Congress critters, and that included, as well as Governor Malloy, and that included Blumenthal, Chris Murphy, and Elizabeth Esty, and there were some others, and I can't recall who they were. But anyway, the only one who responded was Elizabeth Esty. She was the only one that got back to me. And I'm sure you know what's happened with her. I think I sent you something on that. She's not running.
Right, because of a scandal. Yeah.
Yeah, because of the piss poor way she handled a sexual harassment and basically sexual assault problem within her campaign. But she was the only one that responded, and kind of a standard issue. I think it was an email. Law or some kind of a bill that they were trying to put forward for single payer, but there was no hope in hell that it would get passed. And the only other indication that maybe somebody had read that letter was Blumenthal, which I'm kind of surprised I did not hear from him, but he not long after I sent that letter, he went after United Healthcare down in the southern part of Connecticut for the skinny networks, that whole problem with the skinny networks. And I did mention that in my letter. So I don't know if that helped kind of spur that on, or maybe he was already aware of it. But that was when the some of the health insurance companies that were going to participate in the exchange were trying to box out what they deemed to be very expensive doctors and expensive hospitals or forms of care, like, say, cancer hospitals, including some for children, not necessarily in Connecticut, but in other parts of the country. And he was having none of that, so he went after United Healthcare because they were showing signs of doing that, trying to box out certain doctors and hospitals. So that basically, I've been now with the ACA and the exchange all this time, and the good old days, and I was complaining back then to you, I think my insurance was like $587 or $598 a month. Today, and I'm in sticker shock, I'm paying $918.88 for my health insurance.
Lord God.
Yep, per month. And so that's a second mortgage as far as I'm concerned, and it's not sustainable. And I just got rejected by my insurance company for a power wheelchair, a customized power wheelchair, which they don't cover. And they said that's not considered durable medical equipment, which is very odd. So I'm going through now. I got to appeal that. I'm going to get the healthcare advocate, and just go through the motions, and then hope
right. And we all
help.
understand, Darlene, that the reason they do these things is because they know statistically the number of people that they say no to, who then engage in what we call the lump it factor, who just say, "Oh well, I can't. I'll quit."
Right.
And you're not going to do that, and odds are you've got a fighting chance then of making them do what they need to do.
Hopefully so. And they will not cover 100% of the costs of it. And it's ridiculous that they're saying it's not durable medical equipment, because they're covering other things like, wrist splints that I use, and an AFO for my drop foot, things like that crap out after 2 years. So they'll pay for a good portion of that, but then to say that a power wheelchair, which can last much longer, 10, 15, maybe even the rest of my life, is not a durable piece of medical equipment is ridiculous. So, that's one of the things that I'm going to argue. And, I'm paying for the health insurance out of pocket. So, and I work, I have a home-based business, and, I'm certainly contributing to my community. I'm doing all of those things. So, but I don't have an unlimited supply of savings. I've already taken a hit because I had to do modifications to the house, putting in ramps and decking so I can get the wheelchair outside, and then I have to purchase a vehicle so that I can transport the wheelchair, but I really shouldn't get the vehicle first until I know what chair I'm going to hopefully get, and already know which one. I've already gotten the customized particular wheelchair in mind, with with help from the hospital that I go for physical therapy. So it's just going to take a while. And then the other option is Connecticut has a thing called the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, and they've underwritten stuff probably about 13 years ago for me. They redid my shower and put in grab bars and took care of a tripping hazard in the garage so that I could continue to work and go see clients and things like that. So I may need to access them as well. So that's where it's at. But the problem is
right, because you live a life of indolent boredom, right?
Yeah, I am so damn busy. I mean, I'm a happy person. But I am so busy, and it's like I got more stuff to do that's not really work related. Now it's trying to fight with this insurance company, and just trying to where I can stay as a contributing member of the community and not get hurt. I fell a couple of years ago. I had a really bad fall in the house and broke 3 fingers. Really got injured, and that was kind of a wake-up call. So, this is more or less, and it took a lot for my physical therapist to convince me to use a wheelchair, because I am still ambulatory, but I'm just not steady. It's any kind of terrain that's on level or anything like that, I'm at risk. I'm using a cane, I have a rollator, I'm doing all kinds of things, but it's just physically, it's so demanding. But I'm out there, I'm doing stuff. And since we last spoke, one of my dirty little secrets is I'm involved in my local political government, like my local town government. I got elected to a kind of just a small board thing.
Yeah, but how cool.
That I'm doing. That is cool, yeah, because it's a heavy Republican town, and nobody thought I would get in. I mean, I did. I managed to, as a Democrat, get elected onto this little board, and and I'm involved with my town committee, my Democratic town committee, and it just seems that more and more things are happening where I'm being asked to do more things politically in town, and I'm enjoying it. So, but in order for me to safely do it, I need to have a safe way of navigating through life, and the power wheelchair is one of the best things. And it's fun too. These things are they're like little ATVs. They are. They're like these little ATVs, and they cost probably. I remember my doctor saying, I said, well, when I was first approached about it by the physical therapist, and I was highly resistant because I'm still ambulatory. I'm like, what the hell is she bringing in this huge wheelchair? What is this thing? And my doctor said, well, you're looking at something that's basically costs about the same as a small Mercedes. And the one that I'm looking at costs more than my car. So these things are expensive, but they get you up, and they go up, they speed around, and they do all kinds of fun things, but they're expensive. And then you also have to maintain them. So, it's something clearly that I need. But that's the other issue too. Is the insurance company could also say, well, you're still walking, you're still ambulatory, but it's, like my doctor said, it's a non-functional gait. My walk is not functional.
Right, and Earther, just listening to your story, Earther just wrote in and said, because Earther is funny this way, I know you know. A wheelchair is not a durable good. It's a fad item, like Beanie Babies.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Only a Beanie Baby you could probably do without, if need be. But the wheelchair, and more than likely,
well, the insurance functionaries out there saying, well, she can always crawl.
Yeah, crawl or curl up and die.
Well, I hate to say it, but they'd probably prefer that, Darlene. I mean,
exactly.
Somebody's Christmas bonus would probably go up.
Exactly, yeah. And I do plan on alerting, I do plan on calling and trying it again. I'm going to call Blumenthal, Chris Murphy. I'm going to call their offices, and Elizabeth Esty, whose time is winding down because she's not running again. But she's still, my representative. So, and just telling them, look, this is what they're doing, and do you think that this is right? That they're, that they're turning people down for wheelchairs? That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. So I'm hoping doing that and getting the healthcare advocate has helped a lot of people. So I have to fill out a form for that so that they can, quote unquote, represent me or advocate for me. And hopefully the skill set that I have will help me with trying to appeal this and maybe make some headway and at least get them to pay for part of it, because it will not be 100% coverage if I'm lucky enough to get that. But the reason that I called was I guess today marks a year that the special counsel was appointed
yes.
to investigate that. I say some really I always call him the piece of shit squatting in the White House masquerading as president.
It's a little bit of a mouthful, but it works for me.
Yeah. And I don't know if you caught that that article in Wired by Garrett Gaff about Robert Mueller and his time in Vietnam.
I did, actually.
I thought it was a very interesting story, and it was a good read. I thought it was well done, and the author interviewed Robert Mueller, but also spent a lot of time, I guess, interviewing the men that fought with him in Vietnam, and I'm impressed with what this young man did. And if as a woman who's turning 53, I mean, when you look at someone in their 20s, as I think Robert Mueller is probably in 20, 25, in like early 20s. They're basically just babies at that age. They're just like a baby. They're babies, and they're being put off to war. And I'm really impressed with how he conducted himself and what he did. Like, I think one of the things he said, he was more frightened of failure than of dying. Clearly, it's. I don't think the thrust of the article was necessarily to do a comparative with Trump, but the author did kind of draw some contrasts when he was saying how, while Robert Mueller was recovering from knee surgery, so that he could get the go-ahead to go over and fight in Vietnam, Trump was getting his fifth deferment for bone spurs in his feet,
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if he was slinging hash in the mess hall in Vietnam. He was there. He answered his country's call, and Donald Trump squealed about bone spurs and ran the other way.
Exactly. And he certainly wasn't slinging hash. He was, I guess, a first lieutenant. I mean, he was leading these young men, and clearly, and I mean, the other comparative too is the fact that both Trump and Robert Mueller were born into wealth and privilege. I don't think Robert Mueller has ever had to worry about where his next dollar is going to come from in his life. I mean, he clearly was well off and went to the best schools and everything. But what both men chose to do with that privilege, with that wealth, is like night and day. And I don't know if our Jim is the new steward to Patches the cat. I don't know if he's had a chance to catch that article or not, because he's a Vietnam veteran, right?
Vietnam era. I know. I don't know if Jim was actually in country.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he would probably find that a very interesting article, because it is it's a slice of history, and the author really went into the battles and what went into what happened in each of these fights, and I'm just really impressed with how he conducted himself. And then I guess because he survived it, he basically said that he felt he needed to give back, and so the rest of his life seemed to be sort of answering the call to service of his country, whether it was as a prosecutor or
and he got a Bronze Star along the way.
Yeah, and a Purple Heart too,
right, and a Purple Heart. I'm surprised that the Republicans haven't taken to wearing Purple Heart Band-Aids again with him.
Well, see, and I guess that's the thorn in the side for me, is just the piss poor messaging or non-existent messaging of the Democrats concerning the special counsel investigation, because there really are some low-hanging fruit that they can throw out there to kind of counter the bullshit that we're hearing from the right, from Giuliani, and of course Trump is nonstop, because his whole belief system is that the more you keep saying the same thing over and over again, even if it's utter crap.
You mean witch hunt, witch hunt, witch hunt, witch hunt?
Yes, and exactly, and that the other thing that they're trying or test flighting or they've thrown out there is, this is bad for the country. Bullshit. That's something that Giuliani keeps saying, that we need to wrap this thing up. And to me, and considering my involvement locally in politics, and one of the selectmen in my town knows Blumenthal, chances are I'm going to run into him, and I'm going to say something to him, because I feel like, why can't the Democrats come out and simply say, look, Ken Starr, that was a witch hunt right there, because that went on for 4 years, and what was there to show for it but some cum-stained blue dress
and $70 million.
Exactly, the price tag. And clearly he was trying to fish around for whatever he could on Clinton, who managed to operate with this hanging over him for 4 years, function and operate as president while this thing was going on.
You can even make an argument that Clinton not only functioned, he thrived.
Yes. Yeah, I would say he did. And the economy was doing pretty well, all of that. And that was fine for Republicans, though, at that time. There was no complaints about how long this thing was dragging on with the Starr investigation. And why aren't Democrats saying something they could counter with just basic facts and keep saying it? And you look at in less than a year, Mueller, all the indictments, guilty pleas. I think he had one person, that Vanders Swan or whatever his name is, from Holland or whatever, is jailed, has been jailed for lying to the FBI. So a lot has happened, and I think you're right. I think you're 100% correct when you say that this has been moving along fast, that this investigation has been moving along very quickly, because when you think about how complicated it is, we're talking international, the tentacles of this thing, reaching into Russia and Ukraine, and of course back here. And I'm sure that Trump's 40 years of despicable business practices have obviously, I'm sure, factoring in some way. And, the tentacles of this thing are probably reaching into some exoplanets we haven't even discovered yet. This is big, and it's complex, and yet it seems like, you know, they're chipping away at this thing. And one of the one of the things that I would like to see, I would like to see Democrats stepping up more and giving some counterpoints to this a little bit more strongly, instead of just letting the Republicans and Trump and Giuliani rule the airwaves on, what's the saying, set the narrative or dictate the narrative.
And I suspect, Darlene, that's because, and I hate to talk in such apparently flippant terms, but it's fun. And let's remember that the especially where television news is concerned, there is an element of entertainment about it. And it's the same thing that drove Trump's candidacy and the millions upon millions of dollars in free publicity they gave him by letting him call in to just anybody who wanted him to. He talked to anybody.
Right.
And they propelled, because it was good entertainment. It was the news division as reality television.
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening now. And you're absolutely right. The Democrats could be better at this, but facts are. How can I put this? And I'm not trying to put myself into that place, but the other night when I was down in Charleston on election night, and I offered up that quip that, well, sure, it's not fair because. Roy Moore is not Don Blankenship. Roy Moore never incinerated 29 human beings. Well, you don't hear that kind of thing very often,
No.
and maybe there's a reason for it. But if you put some life behind the allegations, not just some crazy old coot babbling on Fox, but if you put some life behind be factual, but be lively about it.
Right.
And I think you can argue, Darlene, that it's that liveliness that's missing.
Yes, and that like that passion for it, and repeating it. Like each time that because Trump is going to do that constantly. He's got the Twitter account, the tweets that he does. Or the twoops, which he's twooping. He's doing it constantly, and I think Democrats need to counter it as much as they possibly can. And I don't even get the sense that the effort is being made. I'm just not seeing it. And then sometimes you'll get some good articles out there. If you look through, like Raw Story or Politico or, Wired, or you have to kind of search for it. You have to news practically every morning. And this stuff is what's getting the predominant airplay. And I'm getting frustrated because I'm not hearing much coming from Democrats at all.
Do you think do you think, Darlene, that they get overwhelmed by it? That just it's like juggling snakes. Just when you think you got a handle on one issue, the entire scene shifts and everything changes, and you've got to master something else. And by the time you do that, there's another element of crazy. In other words, our side is in a constant response mode. And we're not, so we can't carry the attack forward. Seems like, and it's kind of crazy, but the only person carrying the attack forward at this point is Michael Avenatti.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't give a damn what happened yesterday. He's got something fresh, today. And I happened to catch him this morning. My filthy little habit. And it made me think about something, and I tweeted it out and put it on Facebook. There was this pointed use, Mika was interrogating him, and this constant drumbeat of, are there more women? How much were the women paid? And I'm not trying to be sexist here. I'm actually making a point. but it was constantly women, 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 women.
Yeah.
Well, it occurred to me, has anybody asked if there are any men who've been paid off?
Yeah, that was an interesting point that you raised. Yeah, you said that earlier in the program, I think, right?
Maybe I did, but
or maybe you put it in a Facebook post.
Yeah, it was on Facebook
I think you
and
put
Twitter.
it in a Facebook post. That's where I saw it.
And I just can't help wondering, because as I noted, this is a guy who was mentored and taken under the wing of Roy Cohn, who and Roy Cohn, of course, the most hilarious thing about Roy Cohn is the fact that he said, I'm not gay, I just like to have sex with men.
Yeah, he's just creepy looking too.
Oh yeah,
but I was watching some Frontline stuff last night. And I was like, ooh.
And I guess the other thing that got me thinking about it is this brewing scandal coming out of Alabama. I don't know if you've seen it, but damn, that place is turning into just a fun house of scandal and skullduggery. The woman who became governor of Alabama, she was lieutenant governor when Robert Bentley, the Love Gov, had to resign after being caught, in flagrante delicto, which is Latin for bed, with a woman who wasn't his 50 years upstanding Christian family values wife. Well,
Yeah.
Kay Ivey became governor, and now she's got a Republican male challenger who put out a dog whistle saying, why did she give all that money to that lesbian and gay organization, which then prompted a Democratic retiring member of the legislature to say, oh, somebody out her, for Christ's sakes. It's been an open secret for years that the woman she was living with had to move out when she became governor. And it's turned into a debate over to out or not to out, and the ethics of that. And moreover, it's been accompanied by, well, not only is she a lesbian, she's a drunk lesbian, and it's filthy down there.
Right. So it's sort of like how I guess that. But there are certain themes, I think that Democrats could stay on point with, because the same kind of shit keeps being brought up by Trump and by Giuliani, that this needs to be that this needs to end, that this is dragging on too long, the special counsel investigation. And I don't see why Democrats can't stay on message with countering that, because that's been a kind of continuous. I get what you're saying, that things that it's easy for the media to kind of get you off into the weeds on the more salacious things. But my sense, I almost feel like Democrats almost like they want to be viewed as being above it. That they're above the fray.
Yeah, they want to be the grown-ups.
Right, and the problem is that they're not. I feel like they have to do something. They have to say something.
Isn't it fairly simple, Darlene, that the answer to this witch hunt needs to end, blah blah blah? Isn't the answer simply to say, an innocent man says investigate till you're blue in the face? Yeah, that's
take
as long
exactly.
as you need. I'm good.
Yeah, stop acting guilty. If you're innocent, stop acting guilty. You should be welcoming this.
But the one thing that happened yesterday was the deadline for the filing of his the secondary filing of his financial disclosures, and the fact that he confessed something that he had sworn up and down was not true, that he paid off Stormy Daniels.
Exactly. And where are Democrats to say, well, wait a minute, you could even say, hey, listen, this was concealed at best. We're not hearing anything. nothing. Not a goddamn thing.
No, it's crickets. Crickets.
The crickets, and I find that troubling, and I feel like it's reminiscent of, and I don't know why I'm going to say this, and maybe I'm way off base, but it's like Nancy Pelosi saying impeachment's off the table. We're not even going to look at this, which she had no business doing.
I have a nightmare vision that that's in the future somewhere.
Exactly. That's my concern as well. Even if we're lucky enough to get both the House and the Senate back, I'm afraid, because she's already said it. She kind of, because there's a very wealthy donor in California. I can't remember who this man is, but he's been pushing the issue of impeachment, and he's been trying to get. You talking
about Tom Steyer?
Yes, I think that's the man.
The guy with Move to Impeach?
Yes. And she's like, again, there's crickets because they don't want to run on that. And I like, if she fucking does that again, I'm gonna pop a blood vessel, because it's like, you have no business.
Well, that made me crazy back during the Obama administration. I tried to take a sort of cool Zen approach to it when she intimated it earlier, because we've already seen that. When he was working the crowd into a white, and I do mean white hot fury up in Michigan, he said, and if we don't keep the House, they're going to impeach me. They've already said they're going to impeach me, and I can see where you just kind of lay low on it now in the election season, and then open the floodgates if you get the majority.
Right, which is what I think they're portraying Nancy Pelosi is doing, but I don't trust her. I don't get a clear sense that once, if Democrats can retake.
But Auntie Maxine is not being quiet about it. Mm-hmm. Maxine Waters is, because that's who Trump was quoting in Michigan. Yeah. And she says, she's pretty clear about it. I want to nail his pelt to the wall.
Exactly, but we need more Maxine Waters to start talking like that.
Yeah, but Maxine's in a safe district. If you're trying to get one of those 23 seats that are in play, and some of those, and in some of those you're in Trump districts, you're not going to say a word about impeachment, are you?
Probably not. No, but the problem is she has, as in Nancy Pelosi, has a track record. Unfortunately, when it comes to impeachment, we know what she did. When Bush was president, she said it's off the table, which she had no business doing that. I mean, our founding fathers knew flip-flops in their graves over this, because that tool is there. It's kind of, in Comey, what he said, that gets Americans off the hook. The hell that it gets us off the hook. That tool was put there for a reason. And when we're in a constitutional crisis, which we are in, and that's another thing, if I have a chance to talk to Blumenthal, that I would say to him, because he keeps saying, we're on the verge of one. It's like, no, Dick, we are in one.
Yeah.
We are in one. He likes to be called Dick. That's what he wants to be called, Dick. For Richard.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you know well, because you're listening most nights. I've been saying that we've been in one since November 8th, 2016.
Yes.
But getting
Merrick Garland.
Getting them to acknowledge that is another animal entirely. And the other thing that had me just barking at the moon, and I don't know how much of it was simply gaming Rudy, so I have to take that into account, is this notion that Mueller has said, well, no, we have to follow the Department of Justice guidance, and he can't be indicted. And I saw Blumenthal on TV this morning going, well, I disagree.
Yeah.
And what he suggested, and what he suggested is that he can be indicted, and then the indictment can be held in abeyance.
Yeah.
But even that is troubling to me, Darlene, because if you take, and I know you had your cup of coffee in law school just like I did. I remember our conversation.
Yes.
If you simplify, just like you have to do, that much I remember of algebra, having to simplify the terms. if you simplify the issue of whether or not the president can be impeached, if the president of the United States takes a gun, as Donald Trump has suggested he could do, and steps into the middle of Fifth Avenue and murders someone, are these highfalutin solons of the law out there? Do they really intend for us as the American people to believe that that is not an indictable offense just because he's president of the United States?
Exactly.
Because if that's the case, Charlie Manson should have just run for president before the Tate LaBianca murders.
Exactly. That he is, in fact, above the law.
Yeah. I mean, and if he is, then nothing matters. The entire framework, and, you could ask the community of color, and they'd probably say, "Oh, congratulations, white man, you're figuring this out now." Then the entire framework of our judicial and criminal structure is just a fraud.
Yes.
If you can set up one person and say that one person can do anything, I mean, it's Trump, so I guess under that theory, he could rape a stranger in full view of 57 TV cameras, and he couldn't be indicted for rape.
Yeah, like some sort of weird immunity by virtue of the office.
So, I mean, if that's the reality, then we don't have much of a we don't have much of a country.
Exactly.
But it's a tall order just to get people to understand the distinction between impeachment as a political remedy versus the criminal law as a remedy for a violation of the criminal code.
Yes, exactly. Mueller has some interesting people on his team, though, and the more I think about it, the more I really, and maybe I'm giving Rod Rosenstein too much credit, but maybe not. I really think he's kind of the mastermind behind all of this. And in a sense, there's a certain brilliance in all of this because each public figure here is kind of providing a certain amount of cover for the other, because it was Rod Rosenstein, and especially with Sessions, recusing himself, with the recusal, that opened the door for Rod Rosenstein, who really is the main person overseeing this whole thing. I mean, Rob Mueller has to answer to him. He basically meets with him basically on a daily basis. It was Rod Rosenstein that set the parameters of the investigation, which is top secret because I think that the Manafort case tried to get that document submitted into evidence with that Judge Ellis, and a lot of it was heavily redacted about exactly how expansive the investigation is supposed to be, but it was Rod Rosenstein who set those parameters. It was Rod Rosenstein who asked Mueller, which was a brilliant move because of really brilliant move because of who Mueller is and how what his reputation is, and also the fact that Congress didn't bat an eyelash at it. I mean, I was like, all of a sudden, he's a special counsel, and both Democrats and Republicans were in agreement on it. It didn't seem like there was much pushback. The whole thing with Comey, I'm wondering about the letter that Rosenstein wrote. That I'm wondering if it was sort of bait, that Trump easily took the bait to use that letter as an excuse to fire Comey, which, in conjunction with Comey's memos and handwritten notes and everything from his meetings with Trump, kind of bolstered the whole idea that there may have been obstruction. I'm wondering if that was done on purpose to kind of bait Trump into firing him, and he took that bait. And what it succeeded in doing was kind of securing Rod Rosenstein's position there for a while. And then Andrew McCabe, which I cannot get a clear sense of what the hell is going on in that particular case. It seems like it's boiling down to a he said between him and Comey, McCabe and Comey. But McCabe does present kind of a sympathetic figure.
And Comey's always just a little nutty.
Yeah, but McCabe was like, I'm wondering if Rosenstein kind of thought of him sort of as expendable, kind of a sacrificial lamb, and it'll work itself out later on. But again, that kind of placated Trump for a while. And Rosenstein is still there. And, my sense is he's trying to buy Mueller as much time as he possibly can. And Mueller, in effect, is cover for and I keep seeing different numbers, but I last read as 17 attorneys that he has working on his team. And Mueller's clearly the very public face of this investigation. He's taken all the heat and everything, but if you read that article, the Wired article by Gaff, this is nothing for him compared to what he went through in Vietnam. That sort of set his mentality going forward. Like he even said after 9/11 that he was getting more sleep. He had just been newly anointed as the FBI director, and then a few days later, the planes flew into the towers. That he was getting more sleep in the aftermath, the post 9/11 world that he was when he was in Vietnam. So he's used to being in this, and my sense is none of this stuff is bothering him. But it's kind of allowing a certain amount of covers for these other attorneys to work. And Mueller's what? I don't know if he's exactly the same age as Trump, but he's like 72, 73 years old.
I think there's about a year's difference. And you bring up a good point. He can sit there and take that fire, and the extension of that quote about, well, I'm getting more sleep than I got in Vietnam. Look, having a pissant like Donald Trump stand up at a podium and holler, witch hunt. This is a guy who, unlike Donald Trump, has heard shots fired in anger. Okay, he's had people really out there trying to kill him, having ugly things said about him. It's tennis balls off a tank.
Exactly.
And so he can take that all day and twice on Sunday, as long as he's not fired. And I remain convinced, or at least I hope I'm right, that he has set little time bombs out there to go off. He's a Marine. He knows how to establish his perimeter, and he's got tripwires set all around his team. And things will happen, and I can't help but think that because Ty Cobb and some of the other lawyers, they weren't hacks, Darlene, and Emmett Walsh, they've all got to be telling Trump the same thing, whether Trump wants to hear it or not, and that is, this man can own you.
Right. Yeah, I think it's Emmett Flood.
Yeah, I said Emmett Walsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also because Mueller was highly protective of his men in Vietnam, I would assume he's highly protective of the attorneys that are working under him, many of whom are able to do what they're doing in relative quote unquote obscurity. They're able to, and again, this is not an ageist kind of a comment, because most 70, 80, and 90-year-olds are physically move better than me, So I don't get, although I'm sure, he and Rosenstein are the brains behind it, and they're clearly directing things and getting to the intellectual input. The heavy lifting is being done by the 13 to 17 attorneys. They're the ones filing the motions. They're going into the court. They're the ones that are doing that. But again, they're getting a certain level of protection, because Mueller's sort of the face of this, even though that there's that Peter Carr, who I guess is a spokesperson. I mean, I don't know what the hell he does all day because he doesn't really get to say much. It's like no comment. But there are supposed to be, and I have to imagine that they've got this figured out. There's one attorney, I cannot remember the man's name, that is on Mueller's team who is supposed to be like the foremost expert in criminal legal jurisprudence. He's been in front of the Supreme Court more than any other attorney in the country. This guy he sounds like he's fucking brilliant. I mean, he's
among other things, he's brought Patrick Fitzgerald into the team, has he not?
Is that who the gentleman is?
Remember Patrick Fitzgerald, who took down Scooter Libby, who just got pardoned?
Oh, okay. So I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's somebody who is supposed to have, like, he's an expert on criminal legal history. Like, the guy knows more than anyone else. So I would think someone like that, or like, Fitzgerald, as you said, I don't know if they're one and the same. I would have to think they've got a game plan for this whole thing about indicting a sitting president. And it just seems like you've got Rosenstein kind of covering for Mueller, Mueller covering for him in a way, and for all these attorneys to do this work. And it's, to me, I'm very interested in seeing how things pan out, keeping in mind too that he may be bootstrapped, Mueller may be bootstrapped in terms of what he can do if it's just supposed to be a report, I don't know, but to me, I think that this is a well done special counsel investigation. I saw some ridiculous headline about what Mueller can learn from Kenneth Starr. I'm like, you fucking kidding me? There's no comparison.
I know what he could learn from Kenneth Starr. He could learn how to look the other way during a rape scandal at a Baptist university, but past that, not much.
Right, exactly. To me, I think Kenneth Starr, like, school's in session for Kenneth Starr to learn something from Mueller and his team. But then again, I don't think Kenneth Starr would. Speaking of him, real quick, I don't know if you heard that Monica Lewinsky. She said this about a month or two ago or something about with the Me Too movement, that she's kind of begun to rethink what happened to her with Clinton. And how, like, it's odd to me that this did not occur to her, because she's in her 40s now, but she realized to a certain degree taken advantage of by this very powerful man, as in Bill Clinton. But she said she bumped into Kenneth Starr at some sort of an event.
Oh, my God.
And he approached her, and she was really creeped out by him, because I remember you saying that he's a pervert. But she said that he came up to her and said, "How are you doing? How are you doing? I'm sorry about what happened all those years ago, but, well, And she said that he was touching her elbow, caressing her elbow, and kept coming down to her. And she said, I was creeped. She felt really uncomfortable, like he was coming onto her. Sorry, I couldn't. But basically, like, but that's exactly, that I'm like, whoa, because I remember you saying that Starr got off on this whole thing with the.
I've never had any doubt.
Yeah, and what she said there in this article, I don't know if she was being quoted or she was writing it herself, would kind of lend some credence to that.
I'm convinced that the first draft of the Starr report was dog-eared and stuck together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and yep.
That's
and
just
this is
gross.
not what we have. This is not what we have here, and and it's not like Trump is no real adversary for Mueller, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, quite frankly, I would think that having to sit in a deposition or an interview with Trump for any length of time would be a major mind fuck. I'm serious. I would be like, because he's just so random. He's just all over the place with things. And the whole thing about, and again, this is another thing where Democrats could have spoken up, was the whole thing about the questions, the so-called interview questions. Of the 40, it was 48 or 49 of them that when the story first broke, and I think it was the New York Times that attributed these questions to Robert Mueller. I'm reading. You read those questions, I'm sure.
Oh yes.
I'm reading through this, and I'm like, these questions are horrible. And I'm like, I can't see somebody as brilliant as Mueller or anyone on his team writing this shit. And I mean, the first question alone, you could sit there for 45 minutes trying to pin down Trump on his answers. This isn't going to be like a 2 or 4 hour thing. And then, of course, later on it came out that it wasn't from Mueller or his team. It was something that
it was rehearsal.
It was Trump's attorneys. And I'm like, and just the poor quality of these questions, how just they were very vague and generalized. To me, I'm like, he has hacks as attorneys representing him, compared to what the special counsel and what.
Well, he doesn't have pros. He doesn't have pros, Darlene. He's got he's got a hustler from the religion industry. He's got an elbow rubber. Sorry, we're back to that again. In Giuliani. He and again, the real pros, they took a powder.
Yeah, which is why, based on what they're saying about Emmett Flood, not sure what the deal is, why he's walked into this trap. If he's supposed
because he specializes in what happens after you're impeached.
Right.
Because that's who he was in the Clinton impeachment.
True. Which, I mean, refresh my memory on that, because although Clinton was impeached, he was not removed. It was like a two-step process from what I remember.
Right. And
right?
in point of fact, we've got to roll out of here in a minute, and we need to continue.
Yep.
We need to continue this conversation. But Lee in New York wrote a few minutes ago, the insurmountable mountain is 67 Senate votes are needed to convict. With Republicans loving Trump so very much, it cannot happen under the subject line impeachment. But it is a bifurcated process. It takes 50% plus one to impeach. If you think of impeach as being equivalent to the word indict, it takes 50% plus one to impeach, just like it takes 50% plus one to indict in a grand jury. So that all happens over in the House of Representatives. It's the 67 that it takes in order to convict in a trial in the Senate that becomes, as Lee suggests, insurmountable. But yeah, Clinton was impeached, and then he was acquitted by the Senate.
Correct.
And everybody knew he was going to be acquitted by the Senate, but the House went on and did it anyway. I'm not so convinced, depending on how 2018 turns out, I'm not so convinced that there might not be, let's just engage in full-on fantasy, and let's say the Democrats scrounge up 51 victories, or scrounge up 51 members of the Senate, then that means you need 26 Republicans. And if it turns out that if there really is a blue wave, and I'm not convinced of that, Darlene, but if there is one, and it just rolls across the country, and being a Trumpansy suddenly becomes a liability, those 26 senators are not an insurmountable challenge.
Yeah.
Then the question, as I've asked before, becomes what happens upon conviction, because we've never been there constitutionally. If he's convicted by the Senate and refuses to leave,
then what?
Yeah, but then.
Well, I don't even trust him. I don't even trust him to leave if he's voted out of office. I don't trust him. I'm very concerned because he'll say that it was that there was like what he did with Hillary Clinton, and there was 3 million fraudulent votes. I mean, I think we're in big trouble with this guy because
oddly enough, the one joker in the deck is if he should happen to be convicted, and if somewhere along the way Pence has not been dealt with as well. Well, Pence is a shit eater, okay?
Yeah.
And consequently, he would step to the fore and would have no problem whatsoever kicking Donald Trump out of the White House.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a string of what ifs there that can
drive.
The
Democrats themselves.
Well, yeah.
Because I don't trust that they're going to even have the guts to do it. I mean, if you're able to get to 26 or 27 Republicans, I'm concerned. Just because we take back both houses, which again the Senate's looking a little better, but it's the House is much more likely. Even if we're lucky to get both, I'm not confident that they have the guts to do it.
Well, it remains to be seen, and a lot of that will be driven by presumably Nancy Pelosi. I have no doubt that what's his name from Ohio that wants so desperately to replace her, I doubt if he wouldn't have the guts in a million years, because he's more conservative, not less, than Nancy Pelosi. But this has been a magnificent conversation, Darlene. What do you say we do this more than once every 6 years?
I'll try. I'm always listening to your program, but I am busy in the evenings. I'm cooking, I'm doing this and doing that. But this was like the right night. I said, and nobody was calling in,
and you missed, and the tornadoes missed you.
Thankfully they did. Yeah. Yes. My sister's area got hit.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
hard
it.
Down. Yeah, she was okay, but the Brookfield area, and we had four touchdowns and a lot of macro bursts, and every once in a while, Connecticut gets walloped, and it doesn't happen a lot, but who knows? Like you said, with climate change, it's concerning, and I see it with my 2 dogs. They're more pensive. They can detect the greater severity in the storms, and it's very nerve-wracking. It's very unnerving, and there was a lot of damage done, and actually they did not attribute the voice properly, but they quoted the mayor of Brookfield saying, there's trees everywhere, fallen, and it's a mess. It's a real mess. So I'm lucky up here in my little town, but we got hit. The next town over got hit very badly in the 1980s with some major tornadoes in the town that I actually grew up in. So that was in the 80s, and so we do get every 20 years or so, and then I think like 4 or 5 years ago, Massachusetts got hit really hard. There was like this 8 miles, right across the middle of the state. This massive tornado just, went through the middle of Massachusetts, just north of me. So it does happen. You think, it's only out, in the Plain States, but it does hit us in the northeast. So we are. I'm fortunate with this one, but you never know. You never know, and it's tough because of the terrain. You can't see it. It's like, nobody saw the tornadoes coming. Well, somebody did snap a picture on 84 East where they actually saw the tornado in the distance because it's relatively flat. But here we have a lot of, like we have the foothills to the Berkshires. We have a lot of mountainous, areas. So the tornadoes kind of bounce.
Well, they kind of pop hilltop to hilltop.
Yes, yeah, they do. So, but yeah, so we'll wait. We'll have to. I'm finding this whole special counsel investigation fascinating, and
to be a fly on the wall, to be a fly on the wall.
Oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall, if Mueller ever gets an interview with that douchebag in the White House. But I would like to see Democrats saying more.
The tacit confession by Giuliani that they would be lawyer laughing stocks if they allowed him to be interviewed, that's just an admission that Trump's going to do what Trump does. Lie.
Exactly.
Lie.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, and I don't think there's any love lost between Mueller and Giuliani, even though apparently they worked in the same office. I think back in New York. I just everything that I've read about Mueller, I don't think he would much care for a blowhard like like Giuliani, who's just showmanship.
Right, and in any sort of showdown between Robert Mueller and anybody in that team, come on, Robert Mueller versus Jay Sekulow in court, please.
Forget it. Well, there's that icon. I think it might come down as a very iconic photograph of just like a day or two after 9/11 happened. Mueller had been newly anointed FBI director like 4 or 5 days before. And there's this picture of Giuliani, little Mussolini Giuliani standing there. And then there was John cover up the exposed breast of Lady Justice because it's too hot to handle Ashcroft.
Yep.
And then I think there was George, in the words of David Letterman, Pataki, and then Robert Mueller, a much younger Robert Mueller, and all three previous men all had their jackets off and they're like they're getting down to work. Mueller was fully in full suit regalia. He was all dressed up, and you could see where he's reaching over is like shaking Giuliani's hand. But the look on Mueller's face was like, you could just, maybe I'm reading into it, but there was just a grimace there. And you could see that he didn't want to, but he kind of had to shake Giuliani's hand. And
like he had a handful of fish guts.
Yeah, but the grip was like, Mueller's hands were white, like, you are not besting me. It was a real strong grip, like, fuck you, you're not besting me, that kind of thing. And the man who's doing the real work and thinking is in his suit. That's Mueller, and the other three guys are trying to look like they're getting their hands dirty, but they're really not. So to me, I don't think there's much respect there on the part of Mueller towards Giuliani. I think they'd be cordial and that kind of thing, but I think he knows that he could easily take him in any kind of a situation like that. And just what Dowd, I thought that was hysterical when Mueller said, well, I could compel your client to testify, Trump to testify, and then Dowd said something like, this isn't a game here, you're screwing with the work of the President of the United States.
yeah, the guy who has 4 hours of executive time and plays more golf than he does.
Exactly. He's screwing with his golf game.
Yeah, you're screwing with his handicap, damn it. Now quit it.
It's like, I don't know how you could not laugh with that. That was just hysterical. Just reading that was just, oh my God. But anyway, Bob, I will definitely let you go. Good talking with you.
Oh, it's been a joy, Darlene, and good luck. Good luck with the struggle with the insurance company.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
All right, do please.
I'll try to call in more.
And have a lovely evening.
You too.
Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.
That's our buddy, Darlene, in Connecticut. We talk every 6 years or so, and it's always a good conversation. It's time to roll out of here. It's about 9:27. I want to thank Charlene for jumping in to answer Randy's When the Billionaires Choose, You Lose challenge. Thank you very kindly, Charlene. Charlene left a message saying, thanks for a very good show last night, Bob. My great-grandfather was a coal miner up in Glace Bay, Cape Breton. He was lucky enough to get out when he was still a young man and came to Boston, Massachusetts to work with union organizers. I'll bet he was one hell of a man, Charlene. No doubt about it. So thanks for meeting that challenge. Chris's challenge remains on the table. Thank you so much, Matt in San Francisco. Thank you so much indeed. Much obliged. Takes a great deal of weight off the situation here. It does. I wish there was another way, but this is how we survive. Thank you. And thanks to our all-volunteer staff. Thanks this evening in the chat room to Sparky. Thank you to our news ninjas. Thank you to Brother Deacon Asa. Thank you, John Fox. Thank you, Ben Birch, WhiteRoseSociety.org. Thank you to the hardest working, bravest people I know, the men and women of Coal River Mountain Watch, CRMW.net. And always, 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 Gina, it's all for you. Later, y'all.